Good afternoon, everyone. The October 16th, 2025 work session of the Gwinnett County Board of Education is now called to order. Without further delay, I turn the meeting over to Interim Superintendent Dr. Taylor to bring us our first presentation.
Thank you, Chair Dr. Simmons, and good afternoon, everyone. At this time, we will have Executive Director of Research, Evaluation, and Analytics, Dr. Shana Ricketts, to present on the first agenda item. Dr. Ricketts.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Dr. Simmons, members of the board, Dr. Taylor. I'm pleased to be here with you this afternoon to present our class of 2025 results. So I'd like to start by calling out a few of the Board of Education's core beliefs and commitments and highlighting some that you'll see play out throughout the presentation today. So I'd like to highlight in particular under your core beliefs, excellence is for everyone. So you'll see this play out as we look at the results from our class of 2025, as we talk about the graduation rate, as we talk about the advanced coursework taking of this class. And then I'd also like to highlight under our commitments, providing world-class learning for global readiness. So you'll see that one as we talk about our CTAE pathway completion. So in today's presentation, you'll see a number of KPIs called out, and so I'd like to highlight these here. So under our equity strategic priority, you'll see us call out the opportunity and access piece, looking at our advanced coursework taken by our historically underserved groups. Under our excellence strategic priority, we'll talk about our 4-year graduation rate and our CTAE pathway completion. So as we look at our class of 2025, we had 13,604 students in Gwinnett County Public Schools receive a diploma last school year. And this represents the culmination of 2,340 days, that's 13 school years from kindergarten through 12th grade of students learning and improving. And all of our education levels contribute to the results that you see displayed in our graduation rates. Looking at our class of 2025 and their demographics, we can see that over half of the class is eligible for free or reduced price lunch. Just shy of 20% are gifted, 14.9% are MLs, and 11.5% are students with disabilities. As we look at the race ethnicity breakdown of our class of 2025, we can see the highest two groups are Black and Hispanic students, both over 30%. And looking at those top 10 languages spoken, the highest non-English language spoken is Spanish at 21.6% of students in our graduating class, having that as a primary home language. And rounding out the top 5, we have Vietnamese, Korean, and Chinese Mandarin. So I'm going to talk first about our advanced coursework, and I'm going to start off looking at our KPI result, and so that's to the right of this slide. And here we're looking at our advanced coursework taken for students in our historically underserved groups. And here we're looking in particular at 12th graders who by the time they've gotten to 12th grade have taken at least one advanced course. So that might be an AP course, an IB course, or a dual enrollment course at some point during their high school career. And so our KPI goal for 2025 was that at least 42% of our 12th grade students would have had at least one of these advanced coursework opportunities throughout their high school career. And we landed with 46.6% of students in these groups completing some type of advanced coursework. And that value is a bit of an increase from last year. So last year we were sitting at 35.6%. And when we did this KPI goal setting back in 2022, this was 28.2%. So this is one of those places where we have seen kind of increased opportunities for students across the district to be taking some type of advanced coursework. Looking at the chart to the left, we're focused here on our graduates, so that's the class of 2025, and we're looking at each of our race ethnicity groups, what % of students within those groups completed some type of advanced coursework. And so we can see that there are some differences as we look across these groups. So the highest participating group are our Asian students, with 71% of students in this group completing some form of advanced coursework throughout their high school career. And the lowest here is our Hispanic group, with 32% of students in that group completing some type of advanced coursework. On this slide, I'm focusing in particular on advanced placement. So we're looking here out of our graduates, those 13,604 graduates, what percent of them took at least one AP course? And we can see that number for the class of 2025 was 56.6%. Again, out of those graduates, we had 47.4% who took at least one AP exam. And we had 35.3% of the graduating class take an AP exam and score a 3 or higher, which is the score that you would need to be eligible for college credit. And looking across all three of those metrics, we see that those results are higher than they were for the class of 2024. So now we'll talk about our SAT results, so looking at our college readiness. We had 12,719 students from the class of 2025 who took the SAT exam this year. And that represents almost 94% of our class of 2025, which is significantly higher than the SAT test taken across the state of Georgia, which sits at over just about 56% of graduates across the state of Georgia are taking the SAT. And this number of students taking the SAT is an increase over last year of about 1,500, an increase of about 5,000 students since 2 years ago taking the SAT in Gwinnett, which reflects some of the work that's been done by the district in terms of things like the SAT school day. One of the things that we are always aware of as we have more students taking the SAT is that there's a potential for that average score to show some small declines. However, acknowledging the board's commitment to promoting opportunity and agency, this is a place that we as a district are strongly committed to providing opportunities for students to display their college readiness in this way. And so we see that our average score for the class of 2025 was 1,003, which is a slight decline from last year's value of 1,016, but it's still above the national average for public high schools of 996. I don't have ACT results in this presentation because they just got released yesterday. However, I wanted to share with you the results from the ACT as well. So we had 1,340 GCPS students who took the ACT test, and their composite score of 23.1 was higher than the state of Georgia at 21.4 and the national average of 19.4. Here we'll look at our CTAE pathway completers, and I'll start again with our KPI result. So on the right-hand side, we see our KPI goal was that we would have 36.8% of our 12th graders completing a CTAE pathway throughout their high school career. And to complete a CTAE pathway requires taking at least 3 courses in a particular sequence to complete that particular pathway. And so you can see our actual result of 31.3% of 12th graders achieving that goal was lower than our KPI goal. However, that 31.3% represents an increase from 29.7% last year and 27.2% when we first set these KPI goals. So we're continuing to see increases across the district in terms of the percent of our 12th grade students who have an opportunity to complete a CTAE pathway at some point throughout their high school career. As we look at the chart on the left, that focuses on our graduates, so those 13,604 graduates, and what percent in each of those race ethnicity groups were able to complete a CTAE pathway. And we see that across these groups, they range from 32.3% of white students up to 39.4% of Asian students. So they're all in that 30 to 40% range in terms of those pathway completions. Before moving on from this slide, I wanted to call out that when we look at our CTAE pathway completers, over 99% of those students graduate within 4 years. So over 99% of our CTAE pathway completers graduate in 4 years. So with that, let's talk about our graduation rate. So before getting into the results from our graduation rate, I wanted to talk a little bit about how this is calculated. So what's here on the slide is the general calculation or formula that is set by federal law. So there are two key numbers to pay attention to in understanding how the graduation rate is determined. The first is the number of students who receive a regular high school diploma within 4 years. That's the top number. And then the bottom number has to do with the number of students who form that adjusted cohort in the graduation class. And so the words adjusted cohort are important because they help us define who gets included in that bottom number when we're thinking about our graduates. And so the way that that denominator, that bottom number, is determined is you start off with the number of students you had as first-time ninth graders and add in any student who transfers in to a school throughout ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and so on. And you subtract out any student who transferred out for allowable reasons. And you see some of those included on the slide here, whether it's they moved to another country, they transferred to a prison or juvenile facility, and in some cases, unfortunately, we have students who pass away. And so those students get removed from that denominator. While we're on this slide, I wanted to point out that your GEDs, certificates of completion or attendance, or any kind of IEP diploma are not included in this calculation. All right, so here we have our results. So for the class of 2025, we had a graduation rate of 85.4%, which surpassed our KPI goal of 85%. And you can see that that's been an increase over the past few years, and I'm going to show you a few slides that show a longer timeline. You can also see circled on this slide our goal for 2027 of 90%. Right, and kind of what the work that needs to be done to get there. So we're sitting at 85.4% with a goal to get to 90% by the class of 2027. Looking at a longer timeline across Gwinnett and the state, we can see back in about 11 years ago or so, back in 2015, both the state and Georgia were sitting at graduation rates below 80%. And you can see the increases in both over time. There were some of those early years where Gwinnett's graduation rates were above the state's. In more recent years, we've been a little bit behind the state, and this most recent year, we were at 85.4%, which is one of our highest rates, our highest rate in a decade, but 2 percentage points or so behind the state. Looking at our neighbors in the Metro Risa district, we have Gwinnett's rate there shown in blue, that 85.4%. And at the bottom, we have that Georgia rate of 87.2%. And we have some of our neighboring districts. You can see on the slide here, there are a few that are over 90%. As we look across the district, here we're showing all the schools across the district and their graduation rates. We had 20 high schools meet that 85% KPI goal that we had set for the district for this year. And we had 12 of those high schools who met the 90% graduation goal that we have for the class of 2027. I'm going to let this one sit for a little while, but this shows 10 years worth of graduation rates across Gwinnett and across each of our schools. And a couple things that I want to point out here are that for 12 of our schools listed here, the class of 2025 represented their highest graduation rate in the last decade. And we saw some large increases in a number of schools, and I want to call out a few of these schools that had some of the highest increases since last year. So Norcross High School saw an increase of 6.8 percentage points over last year. Central Gwinnett High School saw an increase of 6.2 percentage points over last year. And Burtmar High School saw an increase of 5.4 percentage points over last year. All right, so I'll transition now to talking about our graduation rates by student group. So this chart shows the graduation rate by student group for our class of 2025. Those are the bars. And then the lines on each of those bars show the rate for the class of 2024. And for almost all of the groups, the graduation rate for the class of 2025 was higher than the class of 2024. For white students, it was very similar to last year. So this year we ended at 90.2% compared to last year's 90.4%. You might notice a large increase in our American Indian students, and that's one I always like to just call out because that's a smaller group of students, and that percentage tends to vary a bit more from year to year. But we see some increases. In particular, I'll call out our multilingual learner group, where the graduation rate this year was about 4 percentage points higher than it was for the class of 2024. As we compare this to the state, you can see, looking across all of these, there are some student groups where Gwinnett did better in terms of that graduation rate than the state. And there were some where we did not. And so we can see, for instance, looking at that American Indian group again, or our Black student group, that's about 2 percentage points higher than the state. But in some cases, like our multilingual learners, we're about 5 percentage points below the state's value. So to summarize, I wanted to give a few highlights. We had 16 high schools that achieved their highest graduation rate. They achieved a higher graduation rate than they did last year. There were 20 high schools that met that KPI goal that we had for this year of 85%, and 12 high schools met the 90% goal. In addition, there were 12 high schools that maintained or achieved their highest four-year graduation rate in a decade. And when we look across all of our traditional high schools, we see that they all had graduation rates higher than 80%. So that concludes my slides on the data for the class of 2025. I stand ready for any questions.
Board members, do you have any comments or no questions? We'll open up at this time.
Thank you, Chairwoman Dr. Simmons. I just want to say thank you for this presentation. I appreciate the graphics and the charts and the visuals. It was concise, but still conveyed the information that we needed. So I just really appreciate that as we are trying to be good stewards of time and efficiency. I just have really two questions around, and I'm going to start, some of the slides were numbered and then they weren't numbered, but this starts on slides 5 and 6, so this is about, for my colleagues, 2 to 3 pages in. So I was looking at this last night. I just had a question around, we see our Black and our Hispanic students are, so for the class of 2025 demographics, they are the largest demographics of our graduates, with our Black students at 35.2% and then our Hispanic students at 30.9%. And then when we look at our students who are taking advantage of our advanced coursework, I see that our Black and Hispanic students are the lowest percentage group of students who are taking advantage of completing advanced coursework. So I just have a question around, I see that you all met the KPI goal. Congratulations. What are we doing to further fill those gaps so that these two demographics of students are able to, at the same level as their peers, like their Asian peers, the white peers, multiracial peers, are taking advantage of advanced placement courses?
All right, and I'd like to invite Chief West.
Thank you, Ms. Stone, for that question. Do you mind repeating the first part of your question? I just missed the beginning of that.
Yes, so on slides 5 and 6, I was kind of looking at both of those slides together when we're looking at the demographics of the class of 2025. Our Black and Hispanic students are the highest demographic. But then when we look at the demographic of students who take advantage of advanced placement or advanced coursework, they are the lowest demographic of students to take advantage of those courses. And just have some wonderings around what is the, per the KPI, advanced coursework, historically underserved groups, how are we continuing to fill that gap?
So some of the work that we've engaged in has been through a partnership with organization that has helped build a platform and a process that allows us to look very specifically at students who may have AP potential but have not yet been identified. And so our high schools, all of our high schools implemented that process last school year, and we've been able to see incredible gains in terms of identifying students, partnering them with an adult in the building who they can establish academic partnership with to really help encourage, motivate them, identify what their interests and aspirations are academically, and then identify which courses might be ideal to help them begin to take that first step into AP coursework. So it's been a very intentional effort with our high schools. We've expanded to all high schools of last school year. And this school year, we're actually working with 2 of our middle schools to start that process a little earlier. We do have some reports on that data, and it's something that I can share in our upcoming board update. You can kind of see what the numbers look like, and specifically what information we've been able to capture from our students in that work. In addition to that, just with our efforts in ensuring that we are identifying students earlier who might have gifted potential as well, using our iReady data as a part of that screener, in using that to identify students who may not have been identified previously allows us as well to identify gifted and accelerated potential for students. This is ongoing work. We look at this data on a regular basis, and we're continuing to try to strengthen our processes for identifying, encouraging, and also supporting students who do take that first step into advanced or accelerated coursework.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And then I just have one more, and I look forward to receiving that data. And then I just have one more comment as it relates to our multilingual learners. So I saw that again, the slides stopped numbering, but that we were a little bit behind the state when we're looking at the graduation rates for our multilingual learners. And then when we look at the class of 2025 in comparison to other Metro Atlanta school districts, and this is more of a comment and a wondering around. So I know DeKalb and Athens Clark are similar into per stakeholder and research as far as similar high multilingual population. And so I'm just wondering around, are we connecting with those 2 specific districts?
I have not connected with Athens and Clark County. I partner with Cobb County and some of the other districts, but I'll definitely reach out to them to see what what strategies they're doing. One of the things that we are piloting and rolling out this year, because we know the ELA course has sometimes been a challenge for our students, for our multilingual learners. So one of the things that we are rolling out this year is like embedding ML supports in our 9th and 10th grade lit and comp courses, in addition to the sheltered ELA courses as well. So we just started getting feedback and capturing feedback and piloting those first initial set of lessons. And we're going to continue to kind of track and roll that out during this school year and see like what gains, how are students performing, is it making a difference, so we can determine if we want to extend that work or expand that work to other content areas as well.
Thank you for a great presentation. I'll start with one of my favorite areas, the CTAE, and highlight the 99% graduation rate among pathway completers. My first question is, what are we doing to get more of our students involved in CTAE? How are we working, in fact, ahead of ninth grade, eighth grade, making the introductions? I see that as a real connection to the why. When the kids are in CTAE and they find that area and they complete the pathway, they're connecting the dots on why their education is important and how it specifically connects to what's next for them. So what are we doing to increase that? One, we didn't hit the KPI, which I know sometimes it takes 3 years. If you don't make the decision, if you don't engage in CTAE as a freshman and you pick the wrong one as a sophomore, now you're not going to complete a pathway. So how do we get ahead of the game? Anyone want to jump on that?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the question. I would tell you that probably over the last 10 years or so, we've probably doubled the numbers of students actually taking CTAE classes in grades 6 through 12. As a part of our CS for All initiative, we brought computer science down to every elementary school, computer science and/or STEM special, with pretty much 100% opportunities for our kids across all of our elementary schools. So I think that's our jump into the K-5 world on that front. From there, the counseling team also has started doing aptitude testing in 8th grade as well as 10th grade as well. So there's opportunities. We've switched platforms this year, so looking forward to working with the new platform to be able to engage with them to be able to pull some data for our high school principals to be able to see the aptitudes and interests of our students as well. So that's a tool and a strategy that we're talking to our high school principals about currently as we go through and do our annual data dashboard conversations with our principals as well. So we've definitely seen some major growth over the last 10 years, continue to look to ways to make sure that we hone in, though, on all the right pieces. And as you can imagine with our pathways as well, the job market doesn't sit still. It continues to change and evolve. So we try to continue to change and evolve with the pathways that we offer to make sure it's of student interest, aptitude, but also more importantly that it aligns to high wage, high skill, and in demand for our kids to make sure we're helping guide them into areas where there's actually going to be jobs as they graduate. And/or go into post-secondary opportunities. So,
A follow-up to that, on kind of the AI front, I saw a headline today where Microsoft, BlackRock, the artificial intelligence partnership, they just inked a $40 billion deal on data centers. I mean, this clearly AI is, at least for the, what are we doing to expand AI across, speaking of relevancy, right? Across the district, obviously second year's got to focus there.
Yep.
Is that something that we see for virtually every potential pathway for every high school?
well, I mean, it's, yes, to answer the first part of your question, as far as expansion goes, as you know, we have Maxwell High School of Technology, and there, every one of our high school students, we provide district transportation for our kids to go there. So outside of second year, that was our next thought, was let's bring it to a school like a Maxwell. So we've opened that program up there this year, which again provides access to all of our students that can go. Now, granted, it's one section, one teacher, you know, but with continued thoughts to be able to see that there, then looking at certain schools and opportunities like a Paul Duke STEM and things like that. But you know, the challenging piece for us is going to be able to continue to find industry experts to come in and fill these slots as teachers in these classrooms. Definitely see an opportunity for us to expand again. As we look at job data currently, it's surprisingly enough, even though we know AI is huge, the job data really doesn't back it up quite yet because of the way that job codes are actually calculated and things like that. But definitely something that's on our radar and looking at and trying to stay at the forefront with all this work. But even today at Second Year High School, they had a showcase with schools from across the country there to see the work around AI as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Switching over to advanced coursework, I know 25 years ago, North Gwinnett basically started an AP for All initiative. And it really, obviously, I mean, if you look at those numbers, how much of a disparity do we see in terms of across our schools? And is that something that we address on regular improvement plans? Because I know North's at the high end of that, but they started it a long time ago. Do we How does our distribution pattern look like?
So in terms of, we did have high schools this year and in last year, just through looking at that data, where we're identifying more and more students with AP potential that expanded or even offered AP courses for some of the first times in some of those schools. So it's something that we look at often, and we're a part of similar to what Mr. Hemans was sharing earlier about finding teachers who are certified. You also have to make sure that you have the teacher who is working towards or has that certification in order to be able to offer some of those courses. Similar to CTAE pathways with our AP coursework as well, it's all like you want students to want to like explore and take that option as well. So a part of it is just ongoing communication once we have those students in elementary and middle school that are participating in those gifted and accelerated programs, encouraging those students to continue in those AP pathways. And then we're really curious to see what data and information emerges from our middle school pilot this year so that we can begin to target and identify some strategies to really start identifying students and pushing them in that direction a little bit earlier. I've seen successes like the ups and downs with AP for All initiatives. So, that can be something that we take back and take a closer look at as well.
Ms. Knudsen, I'd call out to the work of our middle schools in that process. The AP for All, I've seen varied results to that as well. For a student to enter, what we see a lot in our EOS data is one of the barriers for students in accessing that advanced coursework is their own level of self-belief, right? And a fear or a trepidation that they can do that level of work. And the confidence that it takes to believe that you can have success in the level class really needs to be generated earlier. So making sure that we're providing access to kids in the upper grades of elementary and throughout middle school. I think you talked about disparity and what we might see in school improvement plans. In transparency, we do see disparity in our gifted numbers. So that access and opportunity piece in middle school, okay, is a big part of this work as well. So as we try to ready kids to take that leap in high school into advanced placement courses, it's really important that part of our school improvement work in the middle school grades is help readying kids for that advanced coursework at the next level.
Thanks. The number that stood out to me was the percentage of our graduates that took the SAT. I think that is a great initiative. The challenge is more, and you're going to expect, obviously, compared to other districts who are only encouraging their high flyers to take the SAT or those that go on to college, you're going to, I think that demonstrates our concern for every student to challenge them to take the SAT, knowing that it's going to affect our numbers, and in this case, not a ton, but some. But I think that's more important to get that experience and to be challenged than for us to have the highest numbers possible. That's not the name of the game. Switching to my last segment, multilingual learners, I noticed, and I'm trying to kind of take the different slides and kind of piecemeal my observations together. The graduation demographic was 14.9%. We hear that we have 26% of our student population as multilingual learners. So, does that mean we've got a wave coming? It was great to see about a 4 percentage point increase in graduation rate among multilingual learners. We're still lagging behind the state. Where do we see the difference between the 15% that were in this graduating class and the 26%, which means that somewhere we've got higher percentages of multilingual learners that we've got to get across the finish line. How much time do we have to prepare for that?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would talk about, I didn't share any results of the 5-year graduation rates, but that's some of what you'll see some of those students show up in those 5-year graduation rates. And because we know that for some of those students who come in a little bit later to our schools, it takes a little bit longer time to get them across that finish line. So that would be kind of my response, but I'll leave it to, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything there.
I think that's something that we're going to have to go back and take a closer look at, because I think your question is asking, we have identified there are more multilingual learners now that are being served. So when can we anticipate seeing those students come across the finish line? So I think I'll just have to get with our research and evaluation team to kind of unpack that a little bit more, to see like where that majority of those students are showing up, like where they are in that four-year cohort.
Okay, because it could be that some of that difference is in the 5-year, because they just naturally, because of the age they came in, they're going to be a part of that 5-year cohort. So that probably explains some of it. I just know that when we compare to other, of the normal districts we compare against, we're the highest by several percent. I think it was like at least 4, maybe 5% compared to DeKalb. And I mean, DeKalb obviously at 81% graduation rate, we're doing something better with a higher number of multilingual learners and a higher graduation rate overall. So pleased with that. And I know y'all are, working all day, every day to find the answers to this, and I appreciate it. Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, excellent presentation. Thank you for the details, and certainly a lot here to celebrate. And I actually want to continue the CTAE conversation, because there were some good things that came out of the last discussion. Really, what sparked my interest was, how we go about getting the students excited about the CTAE pathway and the programs that are available to them, especially at the high school level. And in doing my research and pulling the data that we have available on our website, what I found, having 14 pathways at the high school level and looking at what's out there, looking at digital technology and seeing that there are currently 51 course offerings across all of our high schools for digital technology, which is great, which has kind of led to our conversation around AI and where technology is leading. But, on the flip side of what's going on with building and expansion, and I don't know about all of you, but in my area there's a lot of construction going on, a lot of building, of course, with the Big Rowan project going on. They're about ready to break ground with building right now. I look at our construction pathway, and there are only 9 courses. So I think there's room for opportunity there to get students excited about that side of the business as well, and what can we do to elevate that side of the CTAE pathway, because I can tell you that the parents that I talk to, their students are kind of hungry for that side of the industry, and teaching basic life skills of how to stop a leaky faucet at home. I mean, my kids want to learn things like that, and they do, and I want to teach them because I learned that as a kid. And so things like that to help work our students around that, and pulling the data from the website is very eye-opening, and just seeing those numbers, 51 courses versus 9. There's room for improvement. I think that's something that will help get students hungry for that information, and hopefully we'll start moving our actual number of participants up to exceed those goals. So that's something I'd like to see moving forward to allow those opportunities for those students. So thank you for the information. I think there's room for that. Really, the last comment that I want to make and really question is, this obviously our data with all of the high schools and seeing that the graduation rate for all of our high schools is the highest in 10 years. I mean, what an accomplishment. What do we contribute that data to? And I kind of on the flip side, being devil's advocate, why, even though, we are 10th on the list in terms of graduation rate compared to the other metro Atlanta school districts, looking at us, highest rate in 10 years, even though we're still 10th on the list. Mm-hmm. I know it's a double-edged sword.
I want to make sure, Mr. Gasper, was there a question about CTAE at the beginning? I want to make sure I clarify.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a question first about CTAE in there embedded before I jump to the graduation question?
I mean, really, my question is I'd love to see a better balance, in terms of giving more opportunity to students. 51 courses in digital technology versus, a measly 9 courses in construction.
And the way I would answer that question is really when we look at our programs, right, they get very specific when you think around all the different industries that are out there. And I think you saw my head nods as you were talking.
I did,
I
yeah.
totally appreciate like the work of trades, and as we look at job data and all those pieces, absolutely. But one of the things that we do, if you were to look outside and look at our engineering programs that we pretty much have at every single high school, and if you go in those labs and see how those labs are actually outfitted, the class isn't called construction, but the tools, the knowledge, the skills, and the pieces that kids gain in those classes really can translate really well into the areas of trade. So there is, like, as we look a little deeper into it and have conversations like that, that's been kind of our strategy as we've gone through. Because back to the HR piece and finding teachers, that it can be a challenge in those spots. But we do, just so that you know, we do work with our industry partners and we continue to talk about those pieces. And those are some of the things that we do talk around is welding programs. We talk around construction programs and the additional need for those within our community. So know that those are conversations we're definitely having and thinking about, but that is definitely a piece I wanted to share. And when we think around middle school programs, if you look at how they're set up as well, that's kind of been our strategy there as well. So that's one of the pieces that we do. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
No, it does, and I appreciate that. And obviously, our goal is to educate and create students that can really get out there and add to our workforce here in Gwinnett County, because these are what businesses come out to do, and why these bid projects are created here in the county to pull from our workforce, and then we're not having to bring in workforces from other counties or other states. We want to live, work, and play here in our county, so that's important. So thank you for sharing. Mr. Nebel, I know you.
Thank you for that. So I think you had a two-part question. First was to speak of maybe some of the how behind the growth in graduation rate, and then how can we continue to kind of ascend that ladder of graduation rates across the Metro District. So I'll give a couple broad pieces, and then I'll maybe work to a point. There are myriad reasons, I think, that go into the increase that we've seen in our graduation rate. So I won't hit all of them. I think that's probably impossible to do, but I'll try to hit some of the bigger pieces. So first, before I do that, I do want to celebrate the fact that graduation rate's a K-12 initiative, right? So while this is, heavily we celebrate the work of our high schools, and we see a list of high schools on the screen, it'd be poor taste for me to not acknowledge the work of our K through 8 teachers and leaders there, right? To build the foundation, okay, the work that's done in those grade levels is imperative in the work that you see here. So I wanted to call that out too. Wanted to call it also the effort of people across the high school buildings. So as we get into some of the specifics, I wanted to call out the efforts of all the different internal stakeholders. So our registration teams, the data teams inside of our high schools, the work they do with cohort management data, the work of our counselors, the work they do on their cohort teams is absolutely critical. Obviously, the work of teachers and administrators in the building. Also, though, Mr. Gasper, I want to call out the partnership between folks here at the district office and our local school, all right, because I think sometimes we miss the opportunity to make connections there. But as some of our schools work, for instance, with data management, their partnership with our friends in SPA, with Debbie Durrance and her team, on how to better access practices that accentuate the work around data. The work of Marquita Spikes and her team around scheduling to help high schools, some of which have moved from 6-period days to 7-period days. And that's a significant shift within a high school. So leaning on the district support that takes. The work of TNL in partnership with our high schools who are on school support plans, right? We saw gains in the graduation rate of those schools identified on the WSA as needing extra support as well. Scott Wilbanks and his team who come in and work with cohort management data to help high schools find those kids who vanished, right, to make sure that they're coded correctly and they don't count against schools. So graduation rate, when we ask like what led to the increase, it's obviously the work of the school that you see on the board, but it's also the work of their feeder schools and the partnership between different divisions here at the district office. So definitely want to call those out. One piece that I'd say here is around mindset. In the schools that Dr. Ricketts referenced, and in all of our schools, there needs to be, and we see often, a mindset and a belief system amongst our principals and a conviction that their kids can do better, right? A belief and a pride in their students and their community. So one, I talk about that mindset. And then I'd kind of parlay that into an equation that we use when we talk about school improvement. So when we talk about school improvement, we talk about equal focus on academic press and supportive community. Right, so that academic press piece, when you get a group of kids in a building who, in 2016 had a graduation rate of 65%, and get them to believe that they can achieve at a higher rate. That's that conviction and that belief that the principal and the leadership team and teachers have to bring into their building to empower kids to achieve those levels of success. In that academic press piece, I talk about our focus on high-quality Tier 1 instruction. To go back to our partnership with Chief West and her team, our principals have gone through some professional development over the course of the last year on the 16 different elements of high-quality Tier 1 instruction. That's the primary focus of cluster superintendents, whose job it is to provide support but also accountability to principals when they go into buildings. But then there's also, you can't leave out the supportive community piece. So making sure that we spend time on the mental health component, that we're working on personalized learning plans with kids, that we recognize the differentiated needs. I appreciate the call out down the line from the board today about our multilingual learners, to recognize that the supports that they need are different, quite frankly, from the supports that perhaps that my daughter needs. While there's some universal supports, our ability to identify those individual support for kids. So that supportive community piece. Our credit recovery, so you got Tier 1 instruction, that's got to be the foundation. But then beyond that is credit recovery. And I know that our schools have done a wonderful job and an improved job, okay, of providing in-house credit recovery opportunities. Okay, so credit recovery isn't something that you got to get a ride to on the weekend. It can be. We have schools that still offer it on Saturdays, that offer it after school, but have found multiple schools ways to offer it in-house, right? Finding space in a kid's schedule for them to engage and work in the GOC lab, okay, or work in School Plus programs that give them that opportunity during the school day to catch up, okay, and to not be behind. Two other things, and then I'll pause and I'll get to what needs to change, okay? Our focus on cohort progress. That's always been there, but I say it's a renewed effort. And I'd call out the board and express my appreciation for emphasizing that through our KPIs, and to SPA for emphasizing that in our WSA. So we pay really close attention now, more so probably than we did in the past. And I don't want to speak about something I'm not certain of, but I know in the role I'm in now, the focus that I see on cohort management. So for example, 9th grade. Okay, so 9th grade success rate. What % of your kids leave 9th grade with 5 credits? If that number's in the 60% range, you're in big trouble for the next 4 years, constantly trying to catch kids up. So we've seen schools take deliberate practice towards growing their 9th grade academies, right? Kind of insulating 9th grade kids and providing them a natural step from middle school to high school. Okay, we often lose 9th graders because we don't provide the support. Middle school and high school are two different ball games, right? So just asking an 8th grader to go be a high schooler, that's not a recipe for success. So we see real emphasis on 9th grade cohort, 10th grade cohort, 11th grade cohort, and not just, oh my gosh, it's 12th grade, let's catch everybody up. So there's an iterative process there, I think, that's better than we've seen before. How to get better? One is, and kudos to those other districts. I'm not going to say anything, but good job and pat them on the back. But I know we hold our kids to a very high standard. So I'm appreciative of the work of our principals and our teachers and our students who have raised their graduation rate while also maintaining some really high standards. And I think that's a blessing, but I think we also have to make sure that we don't just hold on to those high standards, but we continue to find ways to be innovative, right? So I think our challenge right now is to be innovative and continue to find more ways to meet the needs of our very diverse student population. And again, much appreciation to the board and our strategic direction, because that's what we're asked to do, right? So I think it's not so much changing, it's continuing the right work, but finding new ways to meet the needs of our kids. So long answer to your question. I hope that provides you with a response, the right response.
I think, that was somewhat of a loaded question, but I couldn't have found a better person to answer it, because I think everyone needed to hear what you said, because it really laid out the entire groundwork of why really it is what we do up here for the entirety of the school system, and why we got to the point of the graduation data at its 10-year best of where we are, and laying out who got us here, how we got here, why we're here, and the reasons that we need to stay here is so gratefully important. And thank you for sharing that. I think not only for all of us here in the room, but everyone listening online, I think it's important. So you spoke so eloquently about it. Thank you for that level of detail. Mr. Nebo. That was great. So I truly appreciate it. I know a lot was said, and much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I want to first start by saying we certainly recognize the successes of our school system and the individual schools and the progress they've made. Having said that, I also believe that when we address the schools with the largest gaps, it uplifts the entire school system. And I want to highlight some things that I see in the data, and I would like to kind of get some more insight around that. First, when we look at the higher level, from an umbrella perspective, we look at all of Georgia schools, and we see that GCPS is number 11 at 85.4%. It's trailing behind the other school systems, like, of course, we have Forsyth County, City Schools of Decatur, Beaufort City Schools, Clayton County, DeKalb County is right below us. And so one of the questions I have around this is, or let me say, insights that I can see is that I know that our school system is the most diverse school system in the state of Georgia. And when we look at the data around all of our Georgia schools, and GCPS being number 11, I wonder if we can see where the MLL data is showing that because we have a greater MLL population, and because the graduation rate may be a 5-year graduation rate that might be associated with that versus 4-year, I wonder if there's a way that we've assessed that. And I know it may be hard to tell if other schools don't track their 5-year graduation rates, but I still think that's a success for us in some ways if kids coming into high school and they need that additional time to be able to learn and graduate. I do think that's a success, but I wonder if we're capturing that in the graduation rates that might make us a little bit more competitive in this ranking that's not quite indicated because we are the most diverse school district. You understand?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to acknowledge a couple things. So yes, we have the highest rate of ML students across
Right.
our Metro RESA by
Right.
far, just in terms of percentage and in terms of volume.
Right.
And we saw that for our students, our ML students, that's one of our lowest rates of graduation across our student groups. And so there is something to that there. I mean, for further sort of analysis to what you're talking about, we would need to kind of go and look at that some more. We need to look at those 5-year rates when they come out and see how much the ML population is playing into that. So that's certainly something that we could kind of take back and get some information to you. But I think there's something to what you're saying there and some further investigation that would be needed.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would be interested in seeing that data. I think it would be helpful. I think there's probably more of a success there than we can see right now in the data. And I think it would be helpful to see that. I know that Meadow Creek High School has some innovative ways in how they're engaging students who are multilingual learners. They also have a very high multilingual learner population, Berkmore also. So when we look at a more school-specific level, we see Phoenix High School, and we also see Gwinnett Online Campus. And I understand, but I don't know if the community or people who may be watching may understand the dynamics around why the graduation rates are low there. And I think that's helpful information for our community to understand the graduation data that is low there and why.
So thank you for the question and for the opportunity. So Phoenix High School, I'll start there, is built to meet the needs of students who perhaps regular school, the traditional school, doesn't have the opportunity to meet. So at Phoenix, we try to meet kids the best at where they are, really personalize their learning plan. They often come to Phoenix behind, so they may not fall into a 4-year cohort graduation, which is what we're measuring here. It may take them an additional year or even a second one beyond that to earn the necessary credits. What we pride ourselves on at Phoenix is how we provide support to those students, right? Whether it's through extended hours, students who might work during the day can come to Phoenix during the evening, right? If childcare is necessary for those students, that's provided. But it's really the individualized learning there that I think that we celebrate the most. Phoenix at Sugarloaf Mills, for example, provides an opportunity for students to come in around work schedules, to take one course at a time and really focus on that, and then develop that momentum. So the learning model that we have at Phoenix is really unique, and it's meant to provide that opportunity for students for whom the regular or the traditional school may not have met their needs. Gwinnett Online, a little bit different because it kind of serves kids from for a multitude of needs, but similar in the effect that it provides a differentiated pathway to success for students for whom that traditional setting may not have been the case. So for instance, we have some students who enter GOC in that K3, 4, 5th range, and that's their home throughout. But we have other students who come into GOC significantly behind and then use the online model to try to accelerate learning. But again, that 4-year cohort may not be where they find success. It might take them beyond that place.
Right. So the point here is I think that this would be really helpful for us to be able to really see the successes of the students who aren't really captured in the traditional data that is presented here before us of all the other schools, but these other schools that may be non-traditional that are addressing a specific need of our student population. And we are like not capturing their success in a way that I think would be helpful, even if it is 5 years, because we can say they're working, they have non-traditional situations, but seeing that and celebrating that, I think would really be helpful, and also it's part of them feeling seen also in the data and not really compared to in the same way, because I don't think you really can. And I just wanted to uplift that with those schools. The other school I wanted to highlight that I see as the big significant difference when we look at slide number 16. And if you look at the Berkmar High School, Duluth High School, I see those are some major shifts, increase or decrease. So my question specifically around Berkmar is, that's a significant increase in any of the other schools here. And it's an outlier for me, and I'm just curious, even when you look at the data from 2016 to 2025, and there's a significant jump from 2024 to 2025, what happened there? That's a huge percentage point difference.
Yeah, so I'll try to capture that in a couple different buckets, for lack of a better word. First, I'll start with leader actions, right? Our cluster superintendent working with the principal there to make sure that principal takes a very active role. The principal Zaragoza takes an active role in the cohort management process. School attendance programs to try to increase attendance. We know that last year we had a chronic absenteeism rate at that school that was excessive, and we see improvement this year in our current data. So seeing an active role taken in the attendance program in that building, actively being an instructional leader, being present in CLTs, being present in classrooms, modeling for assistant principals and department chairs what high-quality Tier 1 instruction looks like. Another opportunity we've seen that's worked that I think is replicable when we talk about replication is the networking of principals, right? So partnering a new or a novice principal with other principals from high schools, such as our Meadow Creek principal, Dr. Wood, on some of his cohort management work, okay? Or working with another principal on how they celebrate student successes in their building, and pulling together best practices to help a novice principal in their work. Second bucket I hit would be just new programs or initiatives in a building that are starting to grow legs. I'll go back to that attendance program as one, and then something I referenced in my answer to Mr. Gasper earlier. Berkmar has adopted, with growing fidelity, cohort management teams, right? So groups of people from across the building, counselors, clerical folks, department chairs, to adopt groups of students and track them with fidelity, right? To really make sure that each of those kids is doing the right thing and that the school is providing, the responsibility of the school to provide those kids with the opportunities they need. The third bucket I'd put that in would be the work of the principal supervisor and making sure that the cluster superintendent is modeling for the principal in that building the right actions, and then providing the correct amount of monitoring and support as well. So kind of going back to that support and accountability piece.
Thank you. One of the things we do see in the data is in the southern part of Gwinnett regionally, they have their lower graduation rates. So I noticed there are regional differences. I also noticed that the higher population of MLL learners, we know in the data, also have the lower graduation rates. So I think that's further need of exploration around the why, because it definitely shouldn't be regionally where you live shouldn't determine your graduation success rate. So I think that's a key point that I'm highlighting here and I see as something to explore. My final question is around AP classes. I think this is a very important point here. The representation of our AP courses and around access and opportunity doesn't reflect the demographics of our community or our school system. And I'm curious around access and opportunity for students, even tracking from middle school or really frankly elementary school to middle school around gifted, middle school, and then they go to high school. I think there's a need and opportunity for us to look at access and opportunities around AP classes. Where are they happening? Where is the greater opportunity of the AP classes? And then where are the gaps? If there's a correlation with the schools that are in the southern regional part of Gwinnett County and the schools that have lower graduation rates and the schools that don't take advantage of the SATs, my wondering is why aren't we providing more access and opportunity for AP courses for those students? Or why aren't we developing some interventions to be able to engage those students to be able to have the access and opportunity for preparedness around those courses that also tracks to the opportunity for CTAE? And I know we have some great CTAE courses, in particular even in our at-promise schools. And I still have the same wondering around really looking at more access and opportunity, quality, what types of subjects, themes, what are we doing there? So I think that equity piece around our regional area and around the MLL area, around the lower income areas, in particular the schools that were identified on the Georgia At Promise list, I think we have some opportunities to ensure that the students are tracking and identify early for gifted from elementary to middle school, as well as ensuring that they have access to AP courses. I don't know if you have any comment or any feedback on that, but I do see it as a major concern. And one of the things that, and just from a deeper level, it's a big deal because when you get the AP credit, it's an additional credit. It also puts you in a different competitive bracket. So when you apply to college, you're in a different competitive bracket. Then it provides the opportunity for you to go to a different type of tier college school. Then it tracks you into maybe different opportunities in employment that could literally have a generational impact. So when you think about how big of a deal this is, it's huge. It's bigger than just AP. It's around generational impact for our families and our communities.
So, I will add a few comments, and then if folks want to chime in as well. So I know that we've seen, Chief West talked about the universal screener. So we have seen increases in the percent of kids being identified for gifted across all our levels and across all our student groups with the introduction of the universal screener. So that's been positive. That's going to take some time to work its way through to the AP coursework, but I know that it's work that we have been engaged in terms of looking at some of those things that Chief West pointed out around AP potential and partnerships that we have to encourage that AP course taking. So some of that work is happening, and it will take some time to kind of see some of those things. But I wanted to share just that part about the identification pieces we're seeing just with the introduction of that screener, those higher rates across all of our student groups and at earlier levels as well, including some of our MLs that weren't being captured or identified earlier. So that's been positive. Noted.
And this is also some of the work that's happening with the current XFAT, where we're looking at our specialized programs, really looking at our students who are twice exceptional. I know that that's been a topic that they've been exploring most in their most recent session. So there's also going to be some data and recommendations that come from that process that, you know, we'll be sharing to the board later on in this year.
Thank you, Dr. Ricketts and the team for the very comprehensive presentation. Just to engage in some additional questions, I do have inquiries around the dual enrollment. I've heard from some parents that they are encouraging students to pursue dual enrollment as opposed to AP coursework. Is this something that the district is tracking in terms of, are we seeing an increase in dual enrollment versus AP coursework completion? And then just to layer onto that, kind of along the lines of what Dr. Therese was hinting on, is the district able to provide us a breakdown by cluster of the number of students or percentage of students completing AP coursework to see if there is, in fact, a disparity that's occurring there, and perhaps some context as to why that might be the case?
Yes, so to your second question, certainly that's something that we can provide, and I'll work with my colleagues to get that to you. With regards to the first part of your question around dual enrollment, we have seen increases in the rates at which students are taking dual enrollment, and not just in Gwinnett, but actually across the state, but we've seen some sizable increases there. I don't know that I can speak to whether they're doing that in lieu of APs or in addition to, but we have seen many more students taking advantage of those dual enrollment opportunities. And so.
Well, I heard it with my ears from parents, so I don't know if it's something worth looking into or something to consider. If we see a decline in AP course enrollment, is it because more people are taking dual enrollment? I think it's just something to be thinking about. In terms of the breakdown by cluster for advanced coursework completion, is it possible to also get that for the CTAE pathway completers to see if there's, in fact, some disparity happening there? I appreciate the questions from the team around the demographics of students completing and not completing. If we can go to the slide about the comparison of graduation rate data across the Metro RESA. Mr. Nebel, you mentioned that GCPS has high standards, which I truly appreciate. I was hoping you can provide additional context as you were sharing that might explain where we're ranking. Can you expound upon what you mean when you say we have high standards, and also reassure the community that our standards are not creating a barrier for some of our students?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Maybe I'll try to answer it with an example. So in our grading procedure, we talk about mastery learning and the assurance that all students have the opportunity to demonstrate mastery over the course of time. So making sure that we recognize the needs of our students, that we don't hold them to a standard that perhaps they could not meet, right? So are we asking a middle school student to arrive before school when they may not have ability to do that, to demonstrate that mastery? Making sure that we maintain our high standards, but also that we provide opportunity for students who may have barriers and help them overcome them. So high standard, give a child a chance to demonstrate mastery, but making sure that we provide multiple opportunities and we provide access to students to be able to do that. The second part of your question, Dr. Simmons?
I'm just hoping you can enlighten us on maybe what some of our standards are in GCPS that are not evident within these other school systems to explain our ranking.
Yeah, so I can't speak to the other school systems, but making sure that we take time to innovate, right? So that we're not holding on to only the past practices we've had, that instead we're looking at our students and the increased individualized needs that they bring, and that we're continuing to find new ways. So our standards have always been very high, right? We've always held high standards to become a system of world-class schools. But making sure that we do it in a way that meets the growing individualized needs of our students is where I think our future work lies.
So in layman's terms, when we talk about our standards and we think about the standards of other school systems, are we able to say GCPS has a higher credit requirement to graduate, or do we know how we differ in terms of what the expectations, the requirements are for our students? Do we know how those differ from district to district, or is that information not known and comparable?
The 23 credits that we require have always been the case. You know, the coursework that we require has always been the same. Making sure, again, I'll go back to the answer I provided about making sure that within that coursework, opportunity exists for students to be successful, okay, in the face of the individualized needs they have is where our work lies.
And I'd add, maybe some additional examples of things that we might do a little differently. There's some course sequencing things that are a little different. We're thinking about our science course sequence with physics being a required course. That's not necessarily true for systems across the state. We do have pretty rigid looks at credits that are obtained outside of Gwinnett. You can't just go, we don't allow you just to go to, I'm not going to say any particular institution, but rack up on 2 or 3 years worth of credits and then just transfer them in to accelerate graduation. So we do have things that we've kind of held as consistent standard just to make sure that the Gwinnett diploma means something. And it's not to suggest that the districts that are able to achieve 90% plus aren't holding those same standards. There are some things that we've just kind of really, really held tight around graduation rate.
Is that number of credits required the same across the state?
Yeah, 23, the total
Across the
number.
state.
Physics, the example that I shared,
That's
it's not
different.
required.
Right.
That's something that we do
Understood.
internally.
Thank you. If we can go to the, I think it's slide 16 with all of the high schools listed. I also celebrate the achievement that we're seeing across most of our high schools. I know that takes a lot of work and intentionality and effort. And so I commend our leaders and our staff members for the investments and the efforts put into seeing these results here today. I do want to ask for some insight around just a couple of campuses where the data is a bit stagnant or has declined. So if you could just provide some insights or context around what might explain or provide perspective on the performance of Collins Hill High School as well as Parkview High School over time, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll speak first about Collins Hill. So they've had a significant jump in their graduation rate over the course of the past couple years. So if you go back to 2023, you see 81.1% and an increase now to 89.5%. I'd attribute that to the instructional focus.
And I just want to be clear in my question. I don't think I was clear. Comparing 2016 to 2025, it appears to be some stagnant progress there. In 2016, we saw a 90.5% rate. 2025, if I'm looking at this correctly, is 89.5. So I'm looking at the long-term progression. If you can provide insight there, that might explain the stagnant rates of graduation over time.
Yeah, to go back to 2016, I'd have to dig a little deeper and then provide you an update through our board updates. I can't, in the role I'm in now, say I was in that role then, so I don't have that context. I can go back to some of the data that we've had around milestone performance, the identification of 2019 kind of as a high watermark for some of our schools, and the recognition that even in our milestone scores, we saw a dip after that we're still kind of rebounding from. So I think you might see some of that. Dr. Simmons in the work to provide you a more thorough answer. I have to kind of go back and look at the historical context that you're asking for.
Not to diminish the achievement we see from 24 to 25, certainly commendable, but just wanted to be clear that I'm looking long-term to see if there's a story or any context that could be provided. Can you speak a little bit to what we see what's happening with Parkview High School?
I'd provide the same answer that I need to go back and do a little bit of research about what prompted the performance that you see in those years of 2016 through 2020 to be able to provide you the answer that you're seeking with the historical context that you reference.
Okay, so just to be clear, in that Parkview High School, 92.2% grad rate in 2016, and now in 2025, 88.7, we've seen what appears to be a decline over time. And so there's no context to be shared there today around what maybe could be explaining that.
I'd reference the point I referenced earlier about that high water mark that we discussed, looking at their scores pre-pandemic of 90.9, and then the dip that was experienced that we see that's consistent with student achievement scores on milestones. They kind of parallel, I think, what we see here. To your point, there is a slow increase from 2021 to 2025. Well, we would probably appreciate a higher increase there. But to provide you with the historical context you're asking, going back to 2016, that's not an answer I can provide you today. No, ma'am.
Okay. Just wanting to elevate that, and I'm sure as a board, we feel that we have high expectations for all. And so when you see some performances that are outliers, a little different than other high schools, it's something to be questioned to gather more insight. As mentioned earlier, it appears that all of our other campuses have been showing consistent increase over time. And so those were just a couple that stood out for me that if you want to chat about later, I'd appreciate just additional context there. If we could go to my last comment around 2 slides forward as we look at the class of 2025 Georgia student group comparison. As we take a look at the performance of our multilingual learners compared to the state of Georgia, we do see that we are at 67.2%, while Georgia is at 72.7%. So we are, in fact, lagging behind the state, which we're aware of as a board. The district has been providing us information around that reality for some time. We've seen investments that have been made. We have a policy committee that is currently working to bring the board a policy committee for consideration for, a policy, MLL policy for consideration to the board. So we are aware of that gap, and I appreciate that now that we're aware of it, that we're actually investing in it, we're exploring it, we're putting policy into place to address it. So I can appreciate the effort and the work that's taking place there. And then also as we take a look at our the performance of our Hispanic students and our free and reduced lunch students, again, lagging behind the state in those areas, just wanting to elevate this idea of when we can get it right for these populations, it's gonna help us to shine even more. It's going to bring up the total of our graduation rate when we can get it right for these special populations. So I encourage our district and our board to continue to look into these areas of needed improvement and how we can better serve the students that represent these groups, particularly as it demonstrates that GCPS is not quite performing on par with the rest of the state when it comes to these populations of students. Any more questions before we move on, team?
Just to Dr. Simmons' questioning around the historical data, and we know the longitudinal data is certainly very important. It tells a story. And I'm also wondering around the gateway requirement. I do remember just years ago just being here on the board, I think Knisson with me here, when we voted to kind of end the gateway. And I'm curious around longitudinal data if there's a reflection in the graduation rates with that. I'm just wondering.
So we abandoned abandoned is probably not the word I wanted to use. we moved away from the Gateway post-pandemic and just never returned. I think Dr. Simmons, and my wheels were kind of spinning while you were talking. I don't know if I would use the word regress. Schools in Gwinnett across the board would have looked much different in 2016 than they do now. We've grown, but we've diversified so rapidly. And so my wondering is, longitudinally, any change is probably more aligned or more explained by our ability to be responsive to the changes, not necessarily because the school is different, right? I'm going to go back. I think where we can go back is actually look at and maybe pull data around what the schools look like then versus now. I know we talked a lot about ML growth, right? So I think we can anticipate seeing that. But there may be some contextual pieces that'll kind of help explain what the differences are. But I think it's a really interesting question, and it's really something that I think we should go back and study. So.
I appreciate that additional insight because it is something to be considered when the student demographics change within a certain school, what the impact or what the consequence or the result will be academically. So I appreciate you acknowledging that it could in fact be the change in demographics of students. And so, of course, I'd be willing to hear more around if that's what the case is, and then what we're doing to help those campuses, those students to perform on par with their peers across the district. Thank you. With that being said, thank you again, Dr. Ricketts. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Dr. Ricketts. We will now have Kathy Harden, Chief Human Resources Officer, provide an update on staff reports. Chief Harden.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Dr. Simmons, board members, and Dr. Taylor. The HR team and I are pleased to present the Human Resources Report for the month of October. Through our report today, you will hear how the Division of Human Resources is partnering with schools to achieve the objectives outlined in Goal 1C, 2C, and Goal 3B, which calls us to transform human resources functions into a strategic talent management organization that supports educators and staff to achieve district goals in addition to ensuring equitable resource allocation to each local school. Our teacher vacancy report. As you can see on the screen, we currently have 28 vacant teaching positions for the 25-26 school year. As you have requested, we are sharing a month-by-month comparison. Additionally, last year at this time, we had 39 vacancies. Schools who gained personnel points due to an increase in student enrollment posted for vacant positions after the displacement process in mid-September. This explains the temporary spike in our current certified teacher vacancies. The vast majority of vacancies are to reduce class sizes at schools where points were earned. It is not reflective of classrooms without teachers. The entire talent management team has a plan and strategy to support schools in ensuring classrooms are staffed with quality candidates. And you can see the numbers there. We have 17 vacancies in our non-high needs schools and 11 in our high needs schools for a total of 28. And you can see the month over month comparison. Paraprofessional vacancies. We currently have 51 vacant paraprofessional positions for the 25-26 school year. As you've requested, we are sharing a month-by-month comparison. Similar to our teacher vacancies, schools who gained personnel points due to an increase in student enrollment posted for vacant paraprofessional positions after the displacement process in mid-September, which explains the temporary spike in our paraprofessional vacancies. To address the remaining vacancies, our talent sourcing specialists are actively collaborating with our recruiters to target paraprofessional candidates. And you can see the split there between our high needs school and our non-high needs school month over month. Our hiring for the 25-26 school year, this slide shows data regarding new teacher hires so far for the 25-26 school year, showing a total of 1,422 new teachers hired. New teachers hired by high needs and non-high needs. You can see the 865 for Title I schools, 557 for the non-title schools. Currently, there are 18 contingent job offers in process. Substitute teaching update. The data from our sub-staffing team continues to show positive outcomes for this school year. As you requested, we've included a historical substitute staffing data on this slide. Just as information, the breakdown on the fill rate by high needs and non-high needs for October is a 91.28% for high needs school and a 95.10% for non-title schools. Teacher attraction and recruitment. The recruitment team is highly engaged in continuing to recruit highly qualified talent for current vacancies, as well as future vacancies. The team is continuously building talent pipelines for the 26 hiring season. HR recruiters, directors, and principals are scheduled to attend many recruitment events this fall. The recruitment events in October have focused on diversity and critical need teaching positions. A sample of recent events are on the screen. Additionally, we also want to highlight one of our paraprofessional to teacher programs, which is part of the Grow Your Own initiative. This Para to Teach program is a partnership between Georgia Gwinnett College and Gwinnett County Public Schools. Our Grow Your Own paraprofessionals can expand their educational journey and obtain a special education bachelor's degree. This degree is a paraprofessional track pathway that allows our paraprofessionals to earn their degree while maintaining their employment with GCPS. An information session was held on October 2nd to begin the application process for the next cohort. As a part of our staffing update, I'd like to share a new initiative as part of your Grow Your Own recruitment pipeline. GCPS has been approved through the Georgia Registered Teacher Apprenticeship Program, or better known as Georgia RTAP. We also have applied to the Department of Labor to become an official Department of Labor registered apprenticeship sponsor. We are honored that our colleagues at Georgia Gwinnett College and Georgia State University have agreed to partner with us in this work. Registered apprenticeships offer an innovative pathway for paraprofessionals and teacher residents, a way to become certified teachers while earning a salary. Designed to address teacher shortages across Georgia, registered apprenticeships allow participants to earn while they learn by combining hands-on classroom experience, mentorship from experienced educators, and college coursework while working towards initial teacher certification. This Grow Your Own program will foster the development of future educators and strengthen the teaching pipeline within our district. We will work closely with Georgia Gwinnett College and Georgia State University for access to instruction, resources, and support designed to ensure the success of the apprenticeship program. We look forward to providing updates on the apprenticeship model in the coming months. Next, open enrollment. Our season will launch on Monday, October 20th, and will run through Friday, November 7th. Elections are effective January 1, 2026. To view the benefit elections or make changes, an employee can log into the GCPS employee portal and select open enrollment. There they will see the link to the state health benefit plan. On the employee portal, it's important to remember that they are two different sites. All benefits will roll over to the 2026, except flexible spending accounts, which must be reelected each year. So what that means is if you do not go in and make an active change, what you have for this current year will automatically roll over. The good news, the district will offer a special opportunity for those enrolled in supplemental life. Employees enrolled may move up by 1 times their annual salary without medical underwriting. Additional amounts are those for those enrolling for the first time will only require 5 health questions versus that medical underwriting. Example, enrolled in 2 times salary can move up to 3 times salary without that underwriting. More good news, rates for the supplemental life will reduce in 2026, allowing enrollees to put more money back in their pockets. The average is $3.25 per enrollee per month based on age and the amount of coverage that they have. The SHBP did release the health insurance costs for 26. Employees across the state will receive an increase in monthly premiums. Employees can expect to see up to as much as 12% increase in their premiums. A weighted average of $16 to $60 per month, depending on provider, plan, and tier. Example, single HMOs versus family HMOs. Rising costs are due to increased claims across the state. The annual benefits training was held on Friday, September 26th for all school-based district local site benefits representatives. You can expect more information in the coming weeks. Also be on the lookout for information on the employee portal and GCPS TV. You can always reach the benefits team directly via Outlook by simply typing benefits. This concludes the HR report, and I stand ready to answer any questions.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman Dr. Simmons. I would like to, before I start questioning, just offer a point of personal privilege. It is freezing in here. Now to Chief Harmon, thank you. I appreciate learning about the Grow Your Own program. I'm from paraprofessional to teacher. I think that's a great opportunity. Now, I see this a partnership with Georgia Gwinnett College. Is that, so the financial burden, is that on the employee or is?
It's a state program.
Okay.
We actually had something similar that we were doing locally here in Gwinnett, but due to some of the grant funding going away, we had to cease that. So this will very timely help us to replace that opportunity for those seeking to become certified teachers through GGC.
Okay, perfect. And I'm going to keep this short so that my colleagues can have an opportunity, and for the sake of time, would like to discuss HR 1 and those possible implications as we look at open enrollment. Second or thirdly, I this week received, a stakeholder reached out to me this week around, she's a brand new mother and she had a very unfortunate experience, and I did invite her to, go through the proper chains, email my school board. She was breastfeeding and told to go into a room, and someone walked in on her, and it just led to this.
Can I ask that we take that offline?
Yes.
Thank you.
But would like to know how we are supporting our new mothers at the local building. Would love to learn more about that process and that information.
I can't speak specifically to every building, but obviously GCPS does support new moms, and there should be lactation space in every building, and I can defer to my colleague here if there's anything additional to add.
On a school-by-school basis, it's really more at the local level how those decisions are being made versus at administrative facilities.
Okay. But I can certainly get you some additional information and share in the weekly update.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to follow up on that because I guess specifically if there is a teacher who needs to breastfeed, then that teacher should go to the principal and say, I need space to be able to breastfeed. And then that
Absolutely.
administrator should then give process around, here's what we will make an accommodation for you, a reasonable accommodation for you to be able to do this when it's
absolutely.
requested. So
Yes.
I kind of
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I do. I have a few questions. So one question I have is, when I'm looking at the data in HR, I see there's a spike in Title I vacancies, in particular for our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our substitutes. I know you also talked about displacement, but I do see there's a spike in October for all three of those areas.
Yes.
Can you speak more specifically about that, and what specifically are we doing to make sure we have that
So,
higher?
as mentioned, we go through the displacement process after we get our final count from the state. And so there are some principals, more likely the veteran principals who really kind of understand from an allotment standpoint, they kind of hold points back if they're unclear if they're going to meet the enrollment projection or not. So once we get the solid numbers back, then those principals will post those positions that they either have held until we get the final count, or they have received additional points above what they were budgeted because their enrollment did increase. And so we go through the displacement process to make sure that everyone has a home. We're not, moving people out of the organization. So we work to ensure that everyone maintains employment. Once we do all of that, and all positions are posted and accounted for, then you see that spike happen because Principal A has been holding points. They post them. Those buildings that have seen an increase in student enrollment are getting additional points to post. And so those two things combined, you see the spike.
Okay, and where is the spike in particular? Which areas, which schools, districts?
Actually, if you would look at your weekly, we show in there every week in the update which schools have posted new vacancies. They are one-offs, a couple off here and there, but we list every school that has posted new positions week over week. So you'll be able to see that this weekend in your weekly update.
Okay. I'm just curious,
specifically.
just from overall, like, where do you see it clustered? So, for example, do you see that maybe they're, due to enrollment decrease, there's a particular area where you find that there is a greater need for vacancies, and how y'all are addressing that? I'm just curious around where
Well, when you
it's
think-
clustered, if there is a cluster. It may not be. I'm just.
I don't think that there's a specific cluster, but if you look at the actual vacancy rate, we don't have really in any particular school an exorbitant amount of positions vacant. Typically, what we're seeing is there are schools with maybe one or two teacher vacancies. We have more para vacancies than we do actual teacher vacancies, and that's a combination of going through the displacement process, getting the final count, and just the sheer need and the difficulty in recruiting paraprofessionals. So it's a combination of everything, and then you can see based on the work that we're doing around our attraction and recruitment events, we are really very busy working to ensure that we're filling. Holly, would you like to speak a little bit about what we're doing with parapro recruitment?
Yes. So one of the things that we did for paraprofessionals is we utilized the email blast to surrounding counties to help support driving candidate flow. We're also attending, it's not up here, but Gwinnett Technical College for paraprofessionals as well. And just to add to Chief Harden's point, the 43 points that were allowed for the districts or the schools to keep, typically those 43 will just say team members would have been placed in some of the positions that were open. So in August, before displacement, we only had about 7 teaching positions. And so the positions you do see are there to truly help support the schools. Most of our current positions are special ed positions, which are our hard to fill positions. So we only have about 9 general ed positions. And so to add to Chief Harden's point, there are only like 1 or 2 open positions at each school. So there's not like one particular school that has more vacancies than others. What we're seeing is the severe level for SPED positions are just harder to fill, and so we're doing some marketing and some campaigning around just making it known to the community that we still have these vacancies available.
I also have, thank you for that. I also have a wondering around the Grow Your Own, and in particular, when we talk about the recruitment you have here, efforts at the colleges. I was at a meeting yesterday. It was a parent event, and just sitting around with the families who happen to also speak Spanish as a second language, or first language. I just thought, like, this is a great pool of people to pull from who understand the community, who understand the cultural nuances, who know the language, and there are some, you know, I guess my wondering is, how are we really strategically engaging those people who are bilingual, or maybe they may speak, you know, more fluently Spanish, but they could still add value around growing our community members, and the impact of that can certainly help with our family engagement, help with absenteeism rates,
Certainly.
help with our, you know, families really feeling that connectedness in the school system. And it also creates a sense of stability. In some areas, we do have opportunities for more stability, and that's really due to a lack of economic opportunity or access. And if we could be that bridge to be able to engage
Absolutely.
those communities that are like literally looking for work and who happen to be also multilingual.
If you would share the group with me.
Meadow Creek High School. They're
Where's that?
Meadow Creek High School.
So is it the parent?
It's the parent group. If
Parent
you
group,
talk to the
okay.
PICS. Now, I know there. I mean, the PICS pretty much should know, like, the parents who are engaged, or maybe if they would be interested. But I do think there's an opportunity for us to PICS parent involvement.
Absolutely, and obviously, the local principal knows who those parents are and those community members are who are actively engaging at the local school. And certainly, I know that they are leveraging those relationships, and if there's someone that they are wanting to have on their team, or they are expressing interest in working in that particular school, they are certainly connecting them to
Right.
us.
And I think there may be, I don't know if you have considered, but it's some strategic pipeline or feeder program that includes some development and access around really creating this pipeline that may be really a strategic advantage for us
Sure.
in multiple ways, in different areas, from our I don't know, bus drivers to our teachers to our paraprofessionals to our SPED. I think just having that dynamic group of families that wanted to be engaged and that were interested in
Okay.
opportunities they're there. The final question I have is, if you can share, like, throughout the hiring process, we have in certain areas more teachers who have less experience, like 1 to 2 or 3 years experience. And it seems like, and because I have a snapshot of District 5, but not of the whole, can you just share of the whole school district wide, like the areas where we have opportunities where there are only teachers with 1 to 3 year experience, and the impact of that? Because one thing that I noticed was that when the teachers have less experience, it actually impacts
Oh,
the
absolutely.
academic performance of our students. So there's a direct correlation around teacher experience and academic achievement. And then when you look at the graduation rates and when you look at the other test scores, you also see the same correlation where those teachers with less experience, the scores are also tracking to be lower. So I'm wondering, like, what are we doing to ensure that we can have a better balance of where there may be a school that has a significant number of less experienced teachers versus other schools?
I can tell you, we certainly have, in particular, the last 2 years, we have had a heightened focus on really hiring certified teachers, that is our first candidate pool. We know that provisional teachers are part of the fabric in K-12 today, and I don't see that going away totally. But I can say, and not to the number specifically, but I can say we've had a significant decrease in the number of provisional teachers that we've hired across the board in the district this year as well as last year, because there's high intentionality, one, to open our hiring season earlier than other districts. If you recall, over the summer, we identified schools that went into the summer with vacancies from the prior school year. Those schools were given first opportunity, if you will, to start their hiring season ahead of the other school buildings within the district. And I believe we afforded we did an early release of points, about 60 points across the district to support those schools that went into the summer with vacancies still open so that they could get ahead of the rest of, because we have competition within the district as well as outside of the district, and that's just the sheer fact of having the number of schools that we have. And so we identified those buildings and afforded those allotments really in advance on some of their points so that they could get ahead in the hiring season. And so that type of intentionality, I think, has helped in us seeing fewer provisional teachers coming into the district. So there is some real strategic thinking around how do we get in front of that, because it is a reality, and we do recognize that the impact having those provisional teachers can have on student outcomes. We're certainly keep that top of mind.
Thank you, Chief Harden, for the report. I do want to follow up on the paraprofessional vacancy report because it is a little concerning. I think it will be helpful for the community to be aware of the role of a paraprofessional and which classrooms have or need paraprofessionals. Can you share a little bit of information there?
When you say which ones need them, I'm not sure I'm following.
So, of
the
course,
question.
as our community understands that every classroom has a teacher, if you can enlighten our community on the role of a paraprofessional and when a paraprofessional is needed in a classroom.
So the paraprofessional is not a licensed teacher, first of all. They are a support person to the teacher. It's a second adult in the building. Really, principals have the discretion to identify which classrooms actually have a need to have a parapro in the room. You typically see it more in the elementary classrooms than you do in the upper grades. But based on the makeup of that classroom, that principal makes the decision that I'm going to spend this allotment on staffing a paraprofessional alongside that teacher. That parapro is a support to that certified teacher.
Thank you for that context. And so the fact that we have 38 classrooms where the principal has identified a need, where that need isn't being filled in Title I schools is significant. And we also have 13 vacancies in our non-title schools.
Yes.
I also wonder do we know if those are vacancies in special education classrooms?
More than likely, yes.
Okay. I believe the district has an ex-FAT that's focusing on special education, so I'm certainly looking forward to the report out that will occur there because I'm interested in how we're going to address this need around special education. We see, in looking at the academic achievement, that this is a population that is not, they're not performing on par with their peers. We see from month to month that we have a human resource challenge with not just paraprofessionals, but also teachers in those spaces. So I think as a board, it's going to be very beneficial for us to hear more around what the challenge is, and so we can think through how we might address that challenge.
So there are two XFATs that will probably address the needs around special education. So obviously, Chief West is the executive sponsor for the special programs that are looking at special ed needs, gifted, and multilingual learner needs. Coupled with that is the staffing XFAT that I am the executive sponsor for. And certainly based on the makeup of the team, which certainly has building leaders sitting and teachers sitting on that XFAT, we will learn later in the XFAT where there's overlap from maybe all three XFATs that are currently happening. There's one occurring as well in our finance area as well, around how we're supporting the district financially around the same needs. And so we're all probably focusing in some way or the other on some of the same needs. And so we will identify where there's triangulation with those XFATs. And so we will lift all of those things up in the report out in December.
In December, thank you.
Yes.
My last question is kind of looping in discussion from the previous presentation. I wondered if you all find that it's hard to staff AP courses. Is it difficult to find staff members for AP courses across the district?
I really can't effectively answer that question. I'm not sure.
I don't know that it's difficult. You want to find the right teacher, and then they have to actually go get training. Sometimes what happens is the need presents itself at a point where it's too late to be able to get somebody trained. Now, there's sub-processes that can be employed, so you can, petition College Board to allow you to use, a teacher to use an additional a syllabus and such to get approval. I don't know that it's as simple as saying it's just harder for AP.
Just to share a little bit more around my thinking, I know we've requested a breakdown by cluster of where students are completing AP courses. My thinking is it's the lack of AP educators possibly going to be a barrier if we do see that there's a disparity? Is that something that that should be considered, and that maybe a school would like to offer a course and they just don't have someone to teach the course? That's where my thinking was.
Okay, yeah, and to that, I think it's a both and. So from a sequencing perspective, you determine the teachers that you need based off of the courses that are signed up. So the first thing to do is make sure that there's access to students to be able to sign up and request these courses. The back end, of course, is being able to hire a teacher and then staff it. But so I think it's work on the front end of educating and making sure that there is opportunity for access, but then also supporting on the back end, helping schools identify teachers and send them for the AP training. There's a cost associated with it that we can help with. That's one piece, but it's not the biggest piece if there's a desire to actually grow a robust AP program. If it's difficult.
I guess this was just an opportunity to get ahead of any barriers, if there are barriers, just to hear from the district around if you're aware of any barriers at this time.
One of the things that I heard is that, and I think this is widespread, not just for AP teachers, but like being able to attract and retain teachers in Title I schools.
Yes.
That's inclusive of APs. So if we're already having an issue with retaining teachers, which is why I think we have a very high percentage of 1 to 3 year experienced teachers in Title I schools, it is, there's a clear gap around or opportunity for us to look at differentials, to look at ways on how we can attract and retain. And that's where some of the feedback I've heard around AP is more around like attracting people to some of the schools that could have that opportunity, but they don't want to work there. But that's also a larger issue around teachers and paraprofessionals in general. And so I
All of
think
that
that
will
requires us
come-
to be able to be honest about the data, be honest about
All of that will come out
that.
in the expat.
I was
It's
just
al- it's
going
on
to
the
say,
ta-
I hope
It's on the
that,
table.
I hope
Yes.
that's a discussion point with the expat. And
Absolutely.
to your question earlier, I heard you mention provisional teachers and our emphasis on getting certificated teachers in classrooms. But I wanted to make sure your question was being addressed in that we have some certificated teachers in classrooms 1 to 3 years, heavily focused in certain schools, that once they get more experience, they're leaving. At least that's what I hear. And so I just wanted to be clear in that. I think your question was just based on provision versus certificate, but number of years, whether you're certificated or not.
Absolutely. And I believe that that is an everyone issue. That is whatever supports we can put around teachers from an HR standpoint, supports from teaching and learning, from school improvement, at the local school building. That's, everyone owns that teacher's experience and that retention of that teacher.
Any more questions or comments? If not, thank you so much. Dr. Taylor?
Yeah, and thank you both for that additional clarification and context. That does help. Thank you, Chief Harden. We now have Masana Mallard, Chief Financial Officer, provide the monthly financial update.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Good afternoon, Chairperson Dr. Simmons, board members, Dr. Taylor. I'm delighted to present the General Fund monthly financial report for the period ending August 31st, 2025. This is the second month report for the General Fund for the fiscal year 2026. Total revenue combined through August ends at 25.8% below budget, with local revenue driven primarily, as we see, from property taxes, anticipated to come in around November instead of October, as we traditionally knew. While on the state side, QBE revenues have started to come in since last month's report. If you recall, that was our July accrual period, so our revenues looked kind of upside down. That has now turned around. And then, of course, on the August revenue for that side, it was about 14% below budget. Then on the federal revenue side, general fund is now on the federal revenue. This is more along our ROTC programs, indirect cost revenue. It's about 22.12% on the positive side. Again, this is what we were anticipating through this period. We hope to see things start to turn around come November, December, with revenues coming up on the local revenue side, and then, of course, increasing slowly around in our QBE revenue. Looking at the expenses now through August, salaries and benefits combined are around 37% below budget. So expenses, of course, in August are starting to increase since our July report, while our non-salary expenses or other expenses closed at about 12.9% below budget. So again, on our expenditure side, we are significantly below budget. That will start to increase again September, October, November. And then, of course, looking at fund balance, it's really still too early again to consider any fund balance impact because, of course, activity spending is still low, revenue is still low, and so it's lagging. After November and December, we'll start to have a more realistic picture of what our fund balance projections will look like for the remaining fiscal year. And that concludes my report for the General Fund Dashboard report. I stand ready for any questions.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman Dr. Simmons. Thank you, Ms. Masana, for this update. I just have one question/comment. Underneath revenues for local, is there a way to break that down, general versus capital, in the future?
In your local revenue for your general fund, that's really your property tax revenue. Are you referring to SPLOST revenue?
Capital.
So your
versus the.
That's not in your general fund revenue, that's in your capital fund. So this is just your general fund operating budget that we're looking at here. But on your monthly financial report that's on the consent items or the superintendent's report where we do the consolidated budget, yes, of course, we can provide that information that breaks down all of our revenues by our fund types. This is strictly your general fund revenue, so there's no capital
So there's no
revenue
capital,
here.
and it's just the general?
No,
Okay, thank you.
This is just your property tax revenue, your investments, so basically your tax revenue, not your SPLOST revenue.
So where would I find the capital revenue?
That's part of your consolidated report that's on your superintendent's report in the evening. But we can break down a report for you that shows every single fund and the revenue report if you should ever need it or the board desires that report.
And is that available to the public?
Yes. it
So
should be
it's
available.
included in the board docs. Can you confirm, Ms. Atkinson, that we don't get that uploaded, but it is in the board docs? Can you confirm?
Yes. Yep, superintendent's report.
Item 7.02. Do you have another question? I'm sorry, do you have another question?
No, I think
Ms.
my
Stone?
question was misinterpreted, but I will ask it offline because I don't want to cause further confusion.
Okay, you want to, are you asking for me to provide the report separately, or? Okay, no problem.
I think if you could also just help in terms of helping to support the public access to the information. The public can access this information on our website, on our dashboard. And
Yes.
just want it,
Yes.
it's there, it's available, and I think that's part of your questioning was that, and it is available. If you could share that.
Yes, it's the superintendent's report in the agenda items includes a consolidated financial report. It's called the monthly financial report. In addition to which, of course, we always post our budget reports, which break down our revenue sources by fund, so that they can see that information. And then, of course, in the future, we would hope that we would be able to provide a lot more reporting, which is, I think, one of the enhancements we talked about for the future. We're going to be providing a lot more real-time access to financial reporting information on the actual district's website, where all of our budget financial information is shared. You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you so much, Chief Millard.
Thank you.
Dr. Taylor?
Thank you, Chief Millard. We now have Dr. David Goldie, Legislative and Policy Administrator, provide a legislative and policy update. Dr. Goldie.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Dr. Simmons, board members, and Dr. Taylor. This month, we present one policy as new business, Policy IDE, Competitive Interscholastic Activities for grades 6 through 12. This policy has been revised to allow students in grades 6 through 8 that are attending Gwinnett Online Campus or the International Transition Center to participate in competitive interscholastic activities as a member of the school team for the school for which they would ordinarily have attended if they weren't at GOC or ITC. This provision is currently set to begin January the 1st, 2026, and our recommendation is this be laid on the table and posted on the website for feedback till the November 20th board meeting. So I'll pause there in case there's any comments, questions.
Dr. Goldie?
Yes.
Did you have a question?
Board members, any questions or comments?
Dr. Goldie, can you share the process in which you came to present this to the board, this particular policy?
Right, I believe this was an inquiry from a student or family that were attending Gwinnett Online Campus. But I think traditionally, the only middle school interscholastic sport was basketball. More recently, I believe soccer, cross country, and volleyball was added. And obviously with more sports, there's more interest. So I think this was an inquiry that was presented to the board. And the board is, I think, believe in the process of revising the policy to accommodate that. I know Chief Niebel has done a lot of work in preparing these revisions. So I don't know if there's anything you can add to that, Chief.
What you stated was accurate. This was brought to our attention by a family whose student goes to GOC, a cross-country runner, to be specific. Revealed an opportunity for us to provide more opportunity, more access for more of our students As Mr. Goldie referenced previously, we only had basketball and cheerleading in our schools. So the increased number of extracurricular interscholastic opportunities, I think, kind of highlighted the need for us to continue to provide access to more of our students, hence the revision.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking is because we had our policy committee meeting this week on Monday, and it was a really productive meeting. We passed out of our committee meeting the opportunity for our policy to be put on the table for board review. It's not being introduced today. It's being delayed until November. And I was curious around trying to understand the process because this was, again, first introduced here. And I'm just curious around the delay with just putting on for public review, which is what was passed out, and you can clarify if you need, but what my understanding was what was passed out of committee was the opportunity for public review in addition to the board review and the school system review, not for vote yet from the board, just for public consumption.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to understand more. I don't know, Rachel, Vice Chair Rachel, if you wanted any comments on that.
Yeah, so the point of information here is we, the policy committee, have been working on a language policy per the recommendation of West Ed, who audited our schools. And one of the things that we talked about months ago, I think it was back in May, we decided to champion a language policy, form the committee. The policy committee has been working on the language policy for months, the past 3 to 4 months. Yeah. And it passed out of committee. And I guess what Chair Dr. Teresa and I are confused on is the delay, because typically when a local government body or a committee of that local government, when a policy is passed, it goes before the full local government and the public for review, at least read for a first or a second time. And so we were just wondering, what is it that the committee needs to ensure that this policy is moved forward and seen by the full board and the public, so that we can have everything that we need to ensure that the district has everything that they need to help advance this policy forward, again, for the children who could greatly benefit from this policy?
I'll take that. So the primary difference between those two, Policy IDE is an existing policy that the board has already approved. This is a revision, but it followed our policy development process. So the policy development process does require, we make edits, it goes to the full cabinet for approval. At that point, then it comes to the board for vote and adoption, or to vote to place it on the table. The distinction between that and the ML policy, well, the ML policy is a new policy, but it's also important to remember that the policy committee is an advisory committee. And so they approved to move out of committee to start the policy development process, which would be then to move to the staff. So if this one that was being presented was new, it would have been started much different. The policy IDE already exists. We're just amending the policy to add a piece. That's the distinction between those two.
Yeah, I just also want to clarify that we shared this policy months ago. I think it was July. The committee has had it since July. It was shared with our school system since August. So the school system has had it since then. We certainly recognize the need to make sure that we are doing everything in the right way with due diligence related to making sure that we have a policy that can be successfully executed. And so understanding that, we also were under the impression that it was already being reviewed, and simultaneously, as we were engaging with the policy committee, when it got voted out of the policy committee, that intent was for it to continue to have simultaneous review with access to the public. And so I understand there may be some opportunities around how we communicate, how we make a motion going forward related to specificity. But I was just curious because this was, again, something that we expected that would be shared today, and it was delayed by the system. so-
And I think, and Mr., oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a question because we have, I get, the issue is a new policy, and I'm wondering, because we received notice around a previous policy that was intended to also serve on this, or be read before this board, the one about the electronic devices, policy JCDAF. So I'm just wondering, if we have a policy development process, how are we ensuring that it's implemented consistently? So that moving forward, because I would imagine that this will not be the first policy that that passes out of the policy committee. We hope to move forward with other policies. And so just want to make sure that whatever policy development process that we have, that we're using it to fidelity and consistently.
Yeah, no, and I think there were some learning opportunities. Using the one that you talked about, we've kind of followed the cell phone, we followed our traditional process. Now, you'll remember that the traditional process, staff usually crafts a complete draft of the policy and then brings it to you. That's the normal cadence. With the policy committee, moving forward, we can do that. The thought was that this would be more of a collaborative effort of the committee to create that draft. So staff didn't do on the front end actual creation. In fact, Mr. Cleveland actually provided a draft to start with. So that's much different. Moving forward, we'd be glad to start the process and then give it to the committee. That wasn't really what we were thinking the committee and you and the chair wanted that process to look like. Good learning opportunity, and we'll certainly make whatever adjustments we need to on our end to make sure that there is the opportunity for staff engagement. If it needs to happen on the front end to make the process cleaner, we're open with it. If it needs to happen simultaneously, we're open with it, to that as well.
Also want to be clear, it was shared. It was shared with the system. Ben shared it with the system with Mr. Gomez in August. So with the intention or the understanding that there would be simultaneous review. And gratefully, like we had Dr. Harris, we had Dr. Valentine to come to one of our meetings, and they really shared some exceptional feedback, direction. They even provided review before, so they've been engaged in the process as well. So they've already provided feedback and commentary and edits on the policy document. So the understanding, again, was because it was already under review and we were already engaging with the system, that it would be, once the advisory committee, which of course we be clear about it being an advisory capacity role, when they decided to move forward to create an open process of review, that the expectation was that it would be a simultaneous review from the public as well as our school system. So lessons.
So it would seem, board members and Dr. Taylor, there may need to be some clarification because this is a new process, because we have this committee. We have the board development process where typically policies that are being revised or are new, they go to cabinet first, and then they go from cabinet and are presented to the board. Now, because this is new, and that's whether it's revised or new policies. Because this is a new policy committee, the question is, do we go through the cabinet board process that we currently have? If we don't want to do that and we want to go straight from the policy committee to the board, then we would need to amend the policy development policy, if that makes sense.
Assumption, again, not even assumption. We already shared this with the system in August for system review. And this was already presented to the GCPS staff and experts to be able to share with us. So I guess going forward, what we can do is just when we have our next meeting is have some more clarification around the and clear expectation around the process.
Absolutely.
And so just moving forward, we have this, I definitely think it's important for us to understand that with fidelity, that any policy we bring, that we're following all of the process for all of our policies and not just one or the other.
Yes.
I definitely just want to summarize what I'm hearing is that there's an opportunity for clarification around the process and transparency around the process in terms of the steps the district is planning to take. It sounds like there was an understanding that the review was happening simultaneously, but upon hearing your feedback today, that sounds like that wasn't the end of the process, and so it appears that the chair and co-chair are asking for clarity around what will the board's process be moving forward so that everybody is clear and on the same page. And to that end, do you know when or how long it may take for you all to review this current MLL policy? Not that we want to rush the district, because we want to get this right, but just helping us to set expectations.
Yeah, so what the policy development process, the policy that Dr. Goldie is referencing, it actually outlines that there's a 2-week window. What the part that and we can kind of finish talking and working through this, from my perspective, and even watching this, the simultaneous editing was clunky, right? Because there were things that perhaps the committee kind of rallied around that were actually things that are against state law, right? But when all the hands are in there in different perspectives, at the same time, it was hard to have like that cadence. So we would, if you asked me today what the appropriate cadence would be, that we would start and then look at whatever draft and say, okay, we can't do this, this doesn't fit, and then give to the committee to work with. If there's things that are automatically off the table, then maybe there's another opportunity for staff to weigh in, but to separate some of those components. Not to suggest that we still wouldn't be there to provide information, but you remember that one part about bilingual, that we can't do that. And it sounds like a really good idea, but that's not something that state law would actually allow us to do. But no one, we were editing it, but anyway, not to belabor or make excuses. I think the big piece is really getting clear on the cadence of when it leaves committee, what does that mean, right? And if the goal is for it to leave committee ready for board consumption, staff has to be on the front end of that, because there's not going to be a space for us to interject before it comes to the board or to the public. So,
Chair Therese and Vice Chair Stone, are you all in a place where you're comfortable continuing the conversation offline to define the process, or do you want to continue to use this time to discuss the matter?
I just want to add one quick note. When it comes to the work that we're doing, we solicit a national policy expert, and with that came model language policy. And we have been working with the district since August on this policy. So we just want to know, or I just want to know, what is why that was not sufficient time, 3 months, to align it with the GCPS way. Because again, you're looking at a national policy, right? A model policy, aligning it to GCPS, aligning it to the programs, because there is some language in that policy around the different programs. So aligning some of that language to GCPS we're relying again on the district, the experts who have engaged in this process since August, to align it to not only the GCPS Gwinnett way, but also state law. I guess so moving forward, would love to know timeline and those clear expectations around how do we move forward so that this does not happen to the detriment of our children and progress for our students.
So the typical cadence would be before a new policy or policy revision comes to the board, would be presented to cabinet, and the next cabinet meeting would be at the beginning of November. And then typically, if it passes through cabinet, it would come to the board that month. So that's the normal cadence of policy development. And it's just a question of whether we want to make a change to that.
The 3 months, we thought that was what was happening. I just hope that we can at least have it.
I'll ask that the process be further defined between Chair Therese, Vice Chair Stone, and our district, so that everyone is more clear moving forward on the expectations. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I also just quickly share that this is the first time we're doing this as a board? So I do want to put that out there, that this is part of the process of doing this work, and it is sort of like a pilot. We are learning, we're growing, it's not going to be a perfect process. And going forward with this committee and with other future potential committees, that this is a learning process that now the next committees will then have a clear process and expectation around this. We certainly have our charter, and we understand that. There was just an understanding that we thought was work was happening when apparently there's still some opportunities to work on. So this is just part of the process of learning and growing and improving and getting better. And this is the first time the board has had something in this advisory capacity to the board. And so just continue to look forward to improving and engaging with our community members to make sure we're meeting the needs of all of our children.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Haley, if I may take just one more minute, I know we're pushed for time. Just wanted to draw the board's attention to the draft legislative priorities document that was sent to the board last week. This is just an initial draft as a starting point for your discussion. This is the time of year where the board starts to craft their legislative priorities for the upcoming session. What was provided to you last week was a collection of some of the board's previous legislative priorities, some suggestions from executive cabinet staff, and some things that we're hearing that may well be up for debate in the next session. So what we're requesting from the board is, this is your document. You own this. You can rewrite this as extensively as you feel you need. So we're just looking forward to feedback from you so we can craft this so that it accurately reflects your legislative priorities. Okay.
Any questions or comments?
Thank you for this. I actually have some slight edits, and
Yes.
but I do like the way this is actually laid out differently.
Yes.
From last, actually ever. This is the first time I've ever seen it like this. So I do appreciate the way this is written. I do like the specificity related to how you have laid this out. I just wanted to note that, but there's some just slight things I would
Absolutely,
suggest
and
to the board
obviously the
consideration.
board, it's your priorities. You can edit as much as you see fit. We presented it in this format because legislators are always asking for, be very specific about your ask. So we're trying to tailor this so it's very specific, very targeted, so it makes it easier for them to craft legislation. So that concludes my presentation, and obviously if there's any more comments.
Thank you for that. And in light of that, I know we're engaging with our commissioners and our legislators and trying to make sure
Yes,
that there
we
is this more clear communication around what we're trying to do and how we can work together and how we need them to advocate for us at the state level. And my wondering is also, have you engaged or have any insight into alignment with their priorities, like the county or the state, and seeing how maybe there could be some synergies here that might make it a bit easier as we start to collaborate more strategically together?
Yeah, the county works, they fall under ACCG, the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. So they follow those. They have a very extensive set of legislative priorities. Some, obviously, some may be in the educational. I'll have to check through to see what they finally settled on. But we can look to see where there's alignment there. Obviously, our delegation will we'll set up a meeting with them. I do know that, if you remember last year, we met with the delegation following their meeting with the county commissioners. I have reached out to the chair of our delegation. There is the distinct possibility of that happening. I've shared an unofficial date with Ms. Atkinson, and I think she might have placed a placeholder on your calendar for a potential date for a similar meeting for this early December. They've already set up the meeting with the delegation, their meeting, and we're looking to possibly do something right after that so that the delegation is already there and in place. Yes. Oh, the meeting with the commissioners. So we have been in communication with the county commissioners. They did request potential discussion areas, some topics that we can collaborate on, and Dr. Simmons very kindly provided some areas for that, and the county commissioners are currently reviewing that, and that was in the last week or so, so waiting for them to come back with their review of those talking points.
I appreciate upon reviewing the priorities, alignment with the achievement data that we've been discussing and where we see gaps. For example, regarding our performance of multilingual learners, regarding performance of special education students, focus on literacy, which is inclusive of pre-K and early learning. So I appreciate seeing those connections. I do want to ask for clarification on the very last bullet around tax reform, if you could explain that.
Yeah, I'll ask Ms. Mallard if she wouldn't mind. I don't know if you have a copy, the last bullet. So there are two main tax reforms that are being talked about. One about property taxes. There is very little detail on that. And the other area, there's a Senate study committee on eliminating income tax. Now, if income tax is eliminated, the state has to replace that revenue with something, possibly sales tax. Obviously, if we're paying more sales tax, things that we're buying as a district is going to cost a lot more. So I may have said too much, but Ms. Mallard, I may have stole your thunder.
You pretty much did. In other words,
Yeah.
anything that they might be proposing that
Yeah.
would in any way infringe upon either our property taxes or so our local property taxes, or even anything that would impact SPLOST revenue. We would want to make sure that there's something in place to offset and provide that revenue back to the district in another form. So whether it's through a state appropriation or through a QBE formula adjustment or any other type of grant opportunity that the state could provide. But we want to make sure that when there is a potential for reducing revenues, any form of revenue, through any type of tax, capping taxes or anything, that we could find some relief from the state in that offset process.
So is that specific to the very last bullet around tax revenue, property tax revenue from new developments?
That one is specifically for, and I think, Dr. Simmons, you and I might have had a conversation about this maybe about 6 or 7 months ago, because there was a bill that did not pass last year, or maybe it did, but it was
Impact
for
development fees?
one district, I think is what it
Yes.
was.
Yeah.
And all other districts, I think, weren't able to get in on that bill. But if there is a potential for Gwinnett to be considered in terms of any new development, that we would have an opportunity to make sure that some of that revenue would be coming back to the district for new developments, yes.
Yeah. Development impact fees. The way the bill was written, it was specifically designed for Forsyth County only. The bill sponsor represented areas of Forsyth County, but obviously we need to be aware of anything like that comes up in this session.
So just to be clear, we don't currently receive development impact fees, and that's on our list of priorities.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, that's why we put it.
Any other questions or comments? As we get into the legislative season, if there are opportunities where we find that other boards have similar priorities and perhaps we can go down to the Capitol and advocate together, I'd be interested in those opportunities.
Absolutely. We'd love to have any and all board members to come down to Capitol to advocate for GCPS. Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Taylor?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Golding. Board members, now is the time where we have dedicated you an opportunity to ask any questions you have on any items on the business meeting agenda, particularly as it relates to the consent agenda. Okay. The presentations under consideration for the November 20th, 2025 work session are.
Dr. Taylor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have two questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
They're specific related to the last two items on the consent agenda. Can you speak around the significant increase in costs for the on-demand translation interpretation services at the International Newcomer Center, as well as the audiovisual equipment over at, I don't know where this is actually. Audiovisual equipment, I don't, actually, it's not labeled, I'm sorry. Audiovisual equipment, I guess it's just business resource managers. So the AV equipment tripled in price. I'm trying to understand the increase in cost on those two items.
We'll start with, I think John Valentine is going to address the translation, and then
Yeah.
Ms. Spoto will address the.
For the interpretation translation services, that's sort of an at-will cost. We don't know how much it's going to be, so we pay when it's requested. We've just put that out there saying this is the amount that possibly we may need, and then as that gets charged through, we pay whatever comes through for it. It isn't due to any huge increase in the services being offered.
Okay. All right.
In the AV, last year's projects just included projectors in the theaters. This year we have additional projects at the high school level. We also have the wireless casters that are on the back of the projectors. They're only 3 years old from Microsoft, but they're starting to fail, and Microsoft doesn't make them anymore, and they don't provide firmware upgrades. So they're not failing in all the classrooms, but that amount is to ensure that there's enough for all 8,700-ish K-8 classrooms in the event we needed to replace every classroom. The intent is not to, but we just need to make sure we have the ability to replace those should they all fail.
You gotta love the last minute technology. 3 years and they're failing. It's like getting a new iPhone every year. All right. Thanks for the update.
I have a question on consent agenda item 6.10. Just wanted some clarification around it. This is Amazon for property management development. What is that?
I can speak to that one. That's not a technology item, but I can speak to that one. Or do you want to?
Either one of us.
Go ahead.
This is a cooperative contract through the state that we have, and really and truly it provides online curated lists through Amazon Business so that all of our schools, including what we currently use for our teacher voucher program, all of that is incorporated into this ability for all funding sources, all locations in the district, all departments. So district-wide, everyone can purchase supplies needed for all programs through Amazon's marketplace.
So it's like an Amazon business account for the district?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Dr. Taylor?
Okay, for the November work session, we thought it'd be a good idea and opportunity to provide an eSPLOS update. So either from an affirmative perspective, here's where we're moving forward. But if something were to go awry, here are the shifts that we're going to be making and which shifts are going to be necessary from a high-level perspective. We thought that might be an appropriate time right there after the November 4th election to provide some kind of generalized eSPLOS update.
Board, any questions, comments?
All right, so Dr. Simmons, this is now the opportunity that you have for board governance discussion. And we're running about 20 minutes behind, but I know there were some items that you wanted to address.
Yes, team. So we, within the last couple of weeks, I believe, had a governance team training where we were provided some observational feedback from our facilitator, Mr. Kleben. And one of the recommendations was for us to consider actually breaking up our working session from the business meeting. In so that we allow community members an opportunity to participate in our working sessions. As you all know, currently they begin at 2 p.m. and it's difficult for many stakeholders to come out and attend those meetings. We've also had a board member express the desire to actually accommodate working schedules of board members. And so I wanted us to take this time to talk through that recommendation to see if we could perhaps arrive at a decision on whether we'd like to move in that direction or not. So I'll open it up for comments.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. I do support this recommendation by Mr. Kleben. I think when our board had the discussion, it seemed like there was some positive feedback. I know, Ms. Knissen, I know you shared wanting to have it in 1 week, and I certainly support that as people, again, a reminder that the board members do have jobs, and this is also our job. And we love both of our jobs, or all of the work that we do in the community, and this is just an extension of that. And so having the flexibility to accommodate the scheduling of board members who maybe travel or have full-time work spaces where they may have difficulty getting here on time, I think that accommodation I certainly support. My only recommendation is that we consider starting this in January to allow, our school system to be able to prepare the changes for how we're going to restructure the meetings, and it gives us more conversation because I think we have another training session before that, and it gives us another opportunity as a board to kind of work through what that looks like for us, and it just gives us time to prepare. So that's my only suggestion, but I do support it based on the needs of the board.
I would echo what Dr. Teresa stated around potentially rethinking our board meeting schedule. When was it? Back in September, Mr. Kleben provided governance training and provided at least 2 options to consider. Would love to revisit those options. Secondly, I am hearing from stakeholders they would love to attend our working sessions, but they're not able to due to work restraints. So would like to see exploring the possibility of maybe surveying other stakeholders just to kind of gauge. And then those are all my comments.
So I'll just say that I like it the way it stands. If there were a change, I'd like to stay in the same week. I have a job that requires travel, and I can work around 1 day a month easily and pick up the other meetings that I need to virtually in many cases. So I would say there's a couple of thoughts, though. Number one, I would want to know the impact on staff. I think first and foremost that you all are informing us so that we can make the decisions we need to make, and that's a voluminous job. Sometimes I think we as the board don't always consider the amount of additional work that we're putting on you when we ask for the amount of information that we ask for and ask you to accommodate our schedules or ask you to accommodate. So I would want to know the impact of what a second meeting means. For you all, that's a second evening that many of you would be here at the ISC later. When we bring in our experts, our other staff, our principals to give us updates, now we're asking them to give another evening that they give plenty of throughout the course of doing their job. And then I would say in support of, or maybe not in support of, I would like to know, since we stream these live, how many people are online while we're streaming these? And then if they can't make it during this time, I would want to know how many people go back and watch. Because if it's that important for them, this is all archived. How many people go back and stream our work session on a monthly basis? Because I think before we totally disrupt the cadence that we have that has worked for many years, I'd like to know that it's actually going to make a difference. And if we're seeing what I assume or kind of anticipate what we'll see from a data perspective, that it probably is not going to move the needle significantly. And at the end of the day, these sessions are for us, for you to inform us so that we can make the decisions we need to make as we provide the policy and the governance around what it is superintendent instructs you to do to take care of the education of our kids.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to comment. I too echo a lot of what Mr. Knudsen said. I like the current format because I, in my career, can set aside one day a month and work around the rest of my schedule with virtual calls and meetings. But you know, I'm too open to the option of keeping it in the same week, whether it's an afternoon or an evening session, another day of the week. But I would also like to see how this impacts, like Mr. Knudsen said, the staff and everyone in this room. I mean, we sit up here as a governance team of 5 board members plus our superintendent and his team, but I look out to this room and there's a lot more than 5 plus the governance team out here. So, you know, taking that into consideration, the team, and then of course everyone else that encompasses that is important to me as well, and everyone in here that has to be present in the ISC for these events that the board and the governance team call upon you all to participate in alongside us. So, you know, again, I like this format, but I am certainly open to, you know, the option if after we do our due diligence and decide, okay, maybe there is an opportunity, and I too agree that, you know, if we can look back and see who watches the live stream, you know, again, this is a meeting between the team and the board. This is not a back and forth between the public and the board. So it's the folks can certainly go back and watch the recording and see the business that takes place here in the work session, and again at the business meeting in the evening. You know, what can we do anything better? Is there a massive viewership that we can entertain by having an evening session on both the work session as well as the business meeting to capture more folks, to fill up a room, to make it look fruitful, like we're doing the work that we should be doing, or is this process the best? So that's kind of my 2 cents, and I know there were some additional recommendations by Mr. Cleveland, and I hope we can find some time carving out right now to talk about those as well. I know Chair Simmons, I don't know if that was part of our discussion today,
Sure,
in addition to this.
Yeah,
okay.
definitely.
So I know there was some other. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. I know there were some other points that were discussed in our meeting. Some of them, being, maximizing airtime between, follow-up comments, and there was a thought about having obviously this meeting, the board, follows Robert's Rules of Order, and Robert's Rules of Order. I came from, an organization that really stuck to Robert's Rules of Order, and that meant timekeeping. That meant, a process that you had a point, you spoke for 2 minutes, yay or nay, and then after a 10-minute discussion, time expires, you move on to the next point. Do we have a chance to have a timekeeper, and who would that person be? Would it be someone off the board so that person's not focused on looking at a watch, looking at a timepiece? Is it someone out in the audience? Is it a person on the cabinet? Is it possibly our board attorney? Is it someone that could kind of keep us on track, so we're trying to stay on track and not going an hour and a half over, running up against hard stops on this afternoon session and missing out on other things that we could be doing. So that is certainly one thing that's important to me, is staying true to our time and true to everyone else's time as well. So I would like to talk about that. Another thing that I was looking at the list of recommendations is really is the board member comments into the meeting. And I always wondered how impactful our airtime truly was at the end of a meeting. I I've been in organizations where I've been in board meetings, and you have the meeting, you follow Robert's Rules of Orders, the meeting ends, we adjourn the meeting. I've never been in a situation where the officers have closing comments, which tack on 40, 45 minutes to a meeting. So I am certainly of one that can be open to say, public comments are done, thank you, meeting is adjourned, rather than adding extra airtime for comments from the board members. So that's my position. Again, I'm not sure how fully impactful it is. I know it gives the board members airtime to say what's on our minds, and I'm certainly respectful of that. But is it something that we want to continue to add 30, 40, 45 minutes of evening airtime to our board meetings for? So those are my additional comments based on the recommendations that Mr. Cleveland provided, and I welcome other board members' comments.
Yeah. I'd like to share that personally, I prefer the one day. However, I am conscious of the need of other board members who have made requests for some flexibilities around our meetings because of work schedule, travel time. And I'm conscious of being able to meet the needs of the board. This is our working session as well. And I just want to be supportive of the needs of other board members who may need that flexibility because they work during the day and need to travel to get here, or they're taking off of time and don't have that same flexibility or privilege, frankly, that some other board members may have if they're have that supportive work environment where their boss could let them out. So I think that's just something that I'm just keenly aware of. And the other thing is the opportunity for community members to be present physically if they want to or not is also a benefit. And I understand, Mr. Knudsen and Mr. Gasper, your perspectives around people can watch the meetings, and I think, and also what is the impact to our school system, which is why my comment is if we can do this in January, I think it does. The time can give us time if we decide to do it, right? It gives us time to be able to understand impact and also garner more feedback. This conversation is now being publicly made, right, for people to provide some comments, and maybe we can get some feedback there. But I do want to support the needs of the board and the accommodation. And then finally, the other points that Mr. Ben suggested and what you commented on, Mr. Gasper, I do think that the opportunity for board comment is important. Also respect the parliamentarian role that you're suggesting. But I want to say for board members to provide comment is our opportunity to also speak to the community in a different way. And I also think both and we can be more conscious and mindful of time. And so I understand that as well. So thank you for your feedback and your comments and perspective.
So I think what I've heard is that the board would like to solicit feedback from the district on the impact to staff of possibly separating the two meetings, what that impact might be on the staff. Also, I heard a request for metrics on viewership of the working sessions. I think I'm hearing, I haven't heard from everyone around the timekeeper parliamentarian responsibility. Does anyone else want to share feedback on their position there? One of the recommendations from Mr. Cleveland was consideration of a timekeeper or a parliamentarian that can help us to limit the amount of time we perhaps spend on commentary. Is that a responsibility or a role that we would like to see implemented during our meetings?
I'm good either way.
Me too.
Yeah, I think, and to Ben's point, right, because he viewed our last board meeting and he mentioned that we spent over an hour and a half just on board comments. And so just looking at how we can better utilize our time in a more efficient manner. So that were 3 minutes or some form of a timekeeper, but then we can work out logistics of who and how that would take place.
So it sounds like for now, we commit to monitoring our time on comments, and if need be, we revisit the parliamentarian role. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. And so between now and next month, we'll look for the information from the district, and we can revisit the idea of whether or not we want to split up the meetings once we receive that information. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, awesome. Any other discussion?
I was just going to say, I mean, obviously some of the topics that we discuss need or deserve more robust. So I think the thing that for me is if we look and if we budget an hour, right, when the presentation's done, we should be able to do the math and know that we've got about, divide it by 5 to stay on time, and so and then be cognizant of that. That's, I think, part of it. And I also think that a lot of times we go over the same things. I know that when I came on the board January of 19, the staff reports piece was 15 minutes. Those are monthly reports. They're just giving us the here's where we're at. If we want to get into the weeds of why we're that with HR, that's not where we do that. We do that. We set up a work session. Let's talk about it. Right? Let's set up but when it comes to, we always blow our time on those staff reports because they're just a report out. They're not designed to get into the weeds. So we either shift that. I mean, those are some things. That's why we're, right now 40 minutes over, is more so, we went a little over on the class of 25 update, but that to me is a topic that deserves the ability to ask those questions and let you all know where we stand on that in terms of our districts or our, demographics, whatever. So, I guess I'm opposed to a strict parliamentarian, but we could create some guidelines. And I think that I'd like to just encourage us to maybe a little more self-policing to begin with. Let's see if we can, monitor this ourselves. And if we can't, then we may need someone to slap our hand.
Any other comments? Okay. If there are no other comments or questions, this concludes our work session. Please be reminded that at 6:30 p.m. there will be a performance by the Jones Middle School Chorus Program in the lobby area of the boardroom. Thank you. Board members, I need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing or deliberating upon the appointment, employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action, dismissal, or periodic evaluation of a public employee or officer, considering student discipline matters, discussing and considering threatened and/or potential litigation with the board attorney, and/or discussing the acquisition, disposal, or lease of real estate, and/or discussing cybersecurity plans, procedures, and contracts. Board members, do I have a motion to go into executive session?
I make a motion for the purposes stated that we go into executive session.
I have a motion by Ms. Stone. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion is seconded by Mr. Gasper. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. It is unanimous. We are now in executive session.